Top six.
Yeah, no, I hate
Eight.
it.
Then we are
Don't
moving.
offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you will have at the community college some flexibility.
U-turn for me was backed up. I was across the highway though.
Oh, yeah, I just sailed right
It
over.
depends on which way. If she went out the hotel, sort of the front on the access road,
They said she was on her, they saw her in the lobby of the
there was
hotel.
more going on there than if you went out by the church.
Oh,
Yeah, I went out the front.
Oh, okay, well then, I went out by the church.
Probably changes moment by moment,
Yeah.
so.
nice.
But she is up and,
Yeah, no, she's up there, there's her suitcases, it was in her hand.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
She had her suitcase, she had her copy.
I think so.
So I think she'll be here momentarily.
Okay, for those in the broadcast room, we'll go ahead and get started since they're waiting on us on the web. It's advertised as an 8:30 meeting, so we need to go ahead and get started. I appreciate you all coming back, not getting scared away. So thank you, and I hope the hotel was all right. You know, the pillows weren't too awful, the bed wasn't too hard, and you know, it was okay. So we really, again, appreciate all your time and maybe having the chance of today's classes to be here. So thank you once again. Thank you for those of you who submitted a little vote last night for what courses you would like to include. For those of you who are able to respond, I summarized your account here and gave it to you in a handout. And I will leave it to you to proceed with that as you see fit. By about 11, but the meeting is over at 12, so we have a little cleanup business at the end. So by 11:30 at the latest, we need to have the field of study decided upon. I think we've got a good start to get there. Just a few preliminary notes. Check to see if your little gizmo is flashing green, and if it isn't, hit the little button at the bottom. Let me remind you, though, that the way these microphones are set up, it catches what everybody says all the time equally. So if 2 or 3 of you are chatting over here and 2 or 3 of you are talking over here and one person has the floor over here, as far as listening on the web, it's just one big cacophony of sound. So let's try to be aware of that and have one person speak at a time. And let's be careful to kind of catch people in order as they're trying to get their hands raised and get the floor. So with that, I will turn it over to our chairs, and thank you again for being here.
Okay. There was a group of us who stayed late yesterday. And I think one of the questions had to do with the Council on Social Work Education and their perspective on things and what we can and cannot do from their perspective. And one question that was raised yesterday was, can we have what we're calling our native students, have a different curriculum than our transfer students? And I think Netta got some clarification on that. So I'm sorry, I didn't ask you, Nita, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't ask you beforehand, but.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I expressed that I had kind of a texting frenzy with Dr. Boraski last night, and she was gracious enough to participate in it. But what she did tell us, no matter what the class is, if there is another class developed, what is important for the four-year institutions is that they clearly identify where they do the assessment of the competencies, so that if there is a practice level class for, experiential learning class or a service learning class developed, for example, even though it may be called an internship at the early level, as long as we're clear that we do the assessment of our competencies in where we do it in our courses, we'll be fine. It does not mean that we have to create any additional courses. We could take those courses and put them over in electives if we have them. And if we don't have them, then unfortunately it's the student who loses.
And we don't want that.
No.
Well, and under the FOS, the student wouldn't be able to lose legally. Because the law is the field of study would have to be accepted, isn't it? Would they
At
be
the
able to
lower
not have
division
it
level.
credited?
At the lower division level.
At the lower division level, yeah.
Saying, put 'em at the start.
Within the program.
Right. Well, right. They'd still have to take whatever you're doing at the upper level, and a community college wouldn't be trying to teach an upper level assessment line item anyway.
Right, but I think the thing is, if another course was developed, that's the piece we were talking about, that if another course were developed and institutions didn't have anywhere to put it in their social work program at the lower level, then the student would lose if they couldn't stick it under an elective somewhere else.
But I think the idea of the FOS is that they're not allowed to lose those credits.
But I don't think that's what I'm hearing. That it goes into an elective isn't a loss, right?
If you
Saying
have
if
an
they don't have
elective to
then
give,
the kids wouldn't get the credits. So 57 of their credits would transfer instead of 60? That's my question.
if the program doesn't have anywhere to put it,
That's no different than now, I don't think.
I know, but I thought that the idea was that the 60 were supposed to just go in block. The FOS goes in block and the core goes in block. So the 60 hours would be 60 hours.
Okay, Ellen, I
So
think
now they
we,
lose 3
I
again.
think we have some question about that. That was one of the things we talked about yesterday. What is the interpretation of that?
Simplify for me again what that is.
The question is, let's say I'm just making this up. What if we developed a class, what if we decided today that one of the classes that would be in the FOS is drug addiction? But at UTA, we don't have an undergraduate drug addiction class that's part of the lower level. And let's just say that a student didn't get into social work until later at the junior community college. And so they've already used up all their electives that they can bring to UTA in terms of their general electives. So we couldn't slide that drug abuse class under a general elective. Would that mean then that we would, so I think the question is, with the FOS, would that mean that at UTA, I would have to find some place to put it because the student can't lose those 3 hours? Or does it mean, well, we would say they're done with their lower elective classes, but they would lose those 3 hours for the drug class because I can't find a place to put it within our curriculum?
Yeah, this has come up before. You're describing really the worst case scenario.
Right.
And the answer is you would have to find something to cut from your curriculum because the students are guaranteed to have those 3 hours of the drug class count towards the degree program.
Okay.
So if you don't have any more electives that you could spare, then you'd have to use your own best judgment of what's the least worst class among your upper division courses to cut to make sure they have those 3 semester credit hours count.
Okay, so we would have to find an upper division class then.
That's right. That's why I kind of am discouraging you from picking too many, a course in the field of study that isn't offered often at the upper at universities. Because if we pick a strange course, not a strange course, if we pick an unusual course,
An outlier.
an outlier. Thank you. Good word. If you pick an outlier class that's only offered in 1 or 2 programs, then the 8 or 10 other programs are going to have to, perhaps, if they're out of electives, face that situation where they're going to have to decide, well, we've got to give these students 3 hours credit. We've got to find it somewhere.
I think the other question that the group of us who stayed later had was if a student comes from Tarrant County to UTA and they are not core complete, they have a good part of the core completed and the FOS completed, what happens to that student?
They'll still have to complete the remaining courses in the core.
Okay.
And that's not a bad thing, because sometimes it's nice to have the course spread out over 4 years to give the students some variety, so they're not just taking nothing but their major for an entire year, their senior year. It's nice to have a little variety in there. So that's okay if they can continue to complete their core in their junior and senior years.
The other question which Satya raised yesterday is they're unable to substitute upper division electives with those courses. So then how are we going to handle that then? Upper division versus lower division courses that they bring from the community college.
That'll have to be decided, as far as I understand it, by an institution basis, case by case basis. How you want to map the course equivalencies. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
There's no single answer for that.
And we actually do in our articulation agreement with McLennan. They have, help me, Joanne.
I'm sorry, I was writing a question I wanted to answer. I'm sorry.
Well, it's in our articulation agreement that we do accept a lower level class or two as an upper level elective
Yes.
at Tarleton. Now, that may be changing as we revisit articulation agreements, but we would waive an upper level class in order to accept those. And so we would just have to look at our curriculum. If we cannot accept those as electives for upper level, we would waive something in order for those students not to lose that credit.
Now, institutions don't like doing that. They don't like taking a lower division course and considering it to be the equivalent of an upper division course. There's a reason why there's a distinction between those upper division and lower division courses. So we need to be cognizant of that. If a course is most often offered at the upper division, human lifespan development was one example we looked at yesterday. 5 institutions offer it at the lower division, 17 offer it at the upper division. You want to avoid where you can putting institutions in that position where they have to say, well, here's a very general introductory level course that now I have to take and give them credit for my advanced specialty course because I've got to find room for those 3 special credit hours.
And what we've typically done that with, just for general information, is the drug and alcohol class, because that's something in our program we train LCDCs and we do their practicums and all that. And I assume probably that went into some of the decision making on which class we typically do that with.
Would there be a challenge, for example, my electives are upper level electives, would there be a challenge even though I don't have undergraduate, 1 or 200 level electives, changing my curriculum to show the elective as 2 or 300 so that it allows a space for something like that?
Good idea.
I was just thinking that it seems to me like what's making this complicated is, and this is understandable, the universities offer different courses, lower division and upper division. Some of them may offer a course lower division and then others offer it upper division and then others vice versa. Because they're taking 60 hours of something no matter if they're at the community college or the university. They're taking 60 credit hours of something. So somewhere we're looking for a space for 60 hours to match 60 hours. The question is which of those few hours are going to be an issue, and it's going to be a different set of hours for every university because different courses are offered in different ways. You see what I'm saying? So like to take a lower division.
That a student who's going to transfer might not care about completing the full 60 hours before they transfer. So the field of study is really only relevant to those students who are going to transfer. If a student wants to complete 60 hours and complete their associate degree, then they would have to complete the 60 hours and fill it up with something. If your field of study is only 15 hours and the core is 42, then the remaining handful of hours, let them take creative writing, right?
Or look at where they're going to go. What we do,
yes.
Most of my students, I'm sorry, I didn't get recognized.
Yeah, go ahead.
Most of my students don't want to stop before they get their AA because they've figured out that they get it and then it's safe even if they have to stop out. The credit won't get too long. They may have been already in school for 4 years, 3 or 4 years just to get the AA, and they don't want to be 8, 9 years later with some credits that expire. So they'll stop. They'll get the AA, plus which a lot of our students, nobody's ever graduated from college. So they want to walk.
Yeah.
You know, they want to walk. Their families want to see them walk. Graduation day is big. So we have graduation day, but a lot of them know where they want to go before they take their last semester or 2. They've figured out, they've been in school for a couple of years, because a lot of ours don't go straight through full time. They've been in school for a couple of years. That last senior year might be their 3rd year. By then, they've made a decision. And we can look at where they're going. And well, I'm real proactive on advising. I think most of us at community colleges are, of what we're allowed to offer. If it's on where they're going, we'll use what we've got left as an elective to fit it into where they're going, or where we have choices. You can take this or this or that to fill it. We'll have it be you're that, not our this. We are, though, and I think this is something that we are really limited because we can only offer what's in the ACGM. So our students aren't going to come with anything that isn't both in the ACGM and on our list of what we offer. And y'all have course offerings and numbering systems that we can't possibly do.
And
We cannot match them.
Remind those students that if they leave if they transfer before they're finished their 60 hours, this is the beauty of the Common Core. This is one thing the Common Core does, is if they complete their Common Core at the university after they've transferred, they can go back and use those courses to apply to their associate degree.
Right.
And walk across the stage
And walk.
as for their associates, after they have already transferred and have started work at the university. So they can still do that. So that's a great thing. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
My question is about lowering the course number, electives. For transfer students, it's okay for them to take this, these elective courses with the lower numbers. But my question is, if an indigenous student comes and says, a freshman or sophomore, can I take this elective because the number is lower to 2011? Can still we allow them because they don't have any, without having any basic understanding of social work? Should we allow them to take this elective, or should we have different sets of?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
She was talking about lowering the course number from 4,000 level to 2,000 level electives. Okay.
No, I wasn't talking about lowering the number. I was simply saying adding an option for them to take a 200 level elective.
We don't have any electives.
I don't either, but if I can make that change in my curriculum, then it's more user-friendly for the transfer student to transfer in a social work elective from the community college.
But again, an indigenous student comes and says, I would like to take that course. Then, should we allow them? Because they have not completed any social work courses?
They can take it at the community college.
What the only courses that they'd be able to ask you for would be what's offered at your curriculum, unless they were planning on going outside to a community college and transferring it in. And then they'd be limited to the extremely limited number of social work courses that are in the ACGM, because community colleges aren't offering anything that isn't in the ACGM. Right now there's 2. I'd like to see 3. But that would be the tops 3. So it's not like we're talking about students coming to you with 18 hours of made-up social work courses at the lower division level. When we're all social workers, we all know that the bulk of the curriculum happens at the junior-senior level. And I am absolutely not interested in trying to have a bunch of freshmen. It kind of makes my blood run cold to think that I'd put a bunch of freshmen in what would be a 4,000 level class. They don't have the writing and the reading and all that other background to do it. I'm very definitely interested in having them be robustly ready for when they come to you.
I think Melody had a comment.
Well, I think yesterday we were talking about several different things. I think we're all going to have to compromise. Community colleges need to look at what university needs are. University, we definitely need to look at what our transfer students need, because so many more students are headed or coming out of high school with associate's degrees, which is a whole other discussion. But I wanted some clarification, perhaps from Dr. Mickey, about, so 2 of the issues we talked about yesterday were the field of study and then the argument that students who are graduating with 60 hours are going to work. And so I see it as 2 different conversations. So the field of study we determine affects the universities, but if I'm at the community college and I want classes for my 60-hour program that would work ready, that that doesn't really impact the, so if I wanted to put a practicum in or whatever we want to call it, the cooperative, I can put that in but not necessarily have it on the field of study?
That's my understanding. I want to get some feedback again about that today before we leave from upstairs. But yes, that's my understanding. In that case, I'm just speculating here. You might want to consider calling that a different program, calling it social work practice, social work profession, social work, I don't know.
What do y'all call it at MCC when you've got your students?
When they're doing field work.
The mental health, it's a mental health.
Well, we have one track, we have several tracks. We have mental health youth counseling, the general mental health, and the mental health substance abuse, which are both certificate and associate. But we added a mental health / social work certificate. It's not job ready, but it allows those students to pick up abnormal and group and some other direct clinical kinds of things that you all don't have room for at the upper level.
Right.
And so we've used those as the electives. Is that what you were asking me?
Yeah. So, but their students can finish with 60 hours and have that coursework that's relatable to going to work with some of these jobs that are now hiring at 60 hours, but also transferable. So if the field of study is separate from this associates, I think there's room for both.
Go ahead.
Well, and I'm sorry, may I follow?
Go ahead, sure.
What I'm thinking about as we're going through this is how can we incorporate the field of study into the tracks we have existing so that it doesn't matter, when they start, which way they think they're going to go, because they often change their minds. So I don't know if I can do it.
Well, and I think we need to look at our curriculum to see if I'm having to accept a lower level elective. I think all students need this drug use and abuse, considering where we're at. We don't offer that in our program at the upper level, except on one campus. And so I need to look at, do we need to change our curriculum to match whatever this field of study, and not compromising what our students get, but we're all going to have to compromise somewhere.
And as long as what we're asking to add wouldn't hurt the student,
Exactly.
then it's a compromise we can all make.
Yes.
And I know that I want them to be robustly ready, so that when they transfer, they're successful. I want that so that you will want to take our students. I don't want to send you ill-prepared students. Who does that help? It doesn't help you, that your failure rates go up, and it doesn't help my students. But I also want my students to be well prepared, just because what they're paying us for is to be well prepared. And I'm not sure that Intro to Social Work and Social Welfare Institution, the two of them only, are the best preparation. And I really think that if I didn't get you a vote last night because I was thinking about this until about 9 o'clock. And yesterday I was like, I don't know that I want to do a cooperative or any, the hands-on kinds of thing. By the evening, and I did. And I really would like to add a 2 or 3 credit hour so that our students have more of an opportunity. To me, it's part and parcel of what they do and what they need to be well-founded, well-grounded, and it adds a level of authenticity to their degree plan.
I think Lisa had a comment.
I just was going to say that I think what we have to be careful about is if we wander into the Weckham yard, which is another side of the house, you can't really mix those things at all. That would take monumental change. I mean, I don't think it would be bad, but I don't see that happening. Maybe I'm
For the field of study or something.
Yeah,
Right, I agree. I
see
don't
that
think
happening.
we can do that.
The other thing is, I want to say this, but I don't want to sound offensive because I don't mean this toward us as people, but I'm just saying in general. Maybe I mean it towards you guys. That's safer. I think it's disingenuous to say that the field of study means this to a student. It means this to us and how we design it. But with half of our state, and again, I haven't looked at it in 2 years, I'll bet it's more than that, moving to a pathways model where you don't have an associate's degree in social work at all, that's what they're going to look at. They're going to see that as this is telling me what I need to do. It doesn't matter if we call it field of study. Students don't know the difference between these things. They are as confused as last year's Easter eggs being lost, right? The other thing is, I think, just having held the hands of a few students who have had to gnash their teeth and cry through this process, I think we got to remember that BSW programs are not a guarantee. You know, they can transfer to the institution. It's always a two-step. It's go to the institution and then apply to the program. And so, you know, you can put into concrete what we think, but the truth is it's never going to be exact because they might not get to go into this program. They may have to go into this one. Those are just my thoughts about, you know, for sure not mixing, remembering that the students don't know field of study means field of study. It just means this is what social workers do, or what potential social workers do, right? And just making sure that we recognize they don't automatically get into your program, so we can't assume that.
Well, unless you have the articulation agreement.
You're not.
And even there, you get.
You're not guaranteed admission to the BSW program.
Yeah, they have to meet your standards.
Okay, we only have until 11:30, so I'm feeling the need to sort of push us forward in terms of making some decisions. So if we look at what Alan provided for us, it looks like, of course, everybody put the first two classes in. We don't even need to discuss those because we've already passed those. So if I go down the list, the next one would be the social problems course.
The N here was 7.
Yes.
It looks like you had 7.
9, 10. So there was 4 people who,
No,
is that
there's
right?
15 altogether. So
there's
there's
15?
8 missing.
So half of us aren't included here. Do we want to rapidly vote again?
What are we voting on?
On any of these? I mean, we
mean the 8
were
people who are
agreed, we
missing?
were pretty much unanimous yesterday, weren't we, on the first 2?
Yeah.
Well, we've already passed those.
Yeah, those are in.
Okay.
Do you want a quick vote, Dr. Wooden?
What are we voting on?
That was her question. Do you want to get the 8?
Do we
Oh, do we want those
Do we want
8?
to include the other 8?
But there is also already votes there yesterday when we worked on that.
Yes, but like, for example, I have changed my mind since then.
Okay.
Yeah, how long you can do that?
We
That's
did-
fine, that's
How
fine.
many times you can do that?
So my vote would not look like this. I don't know about anybody else's, but as I was thinking about what even would I write,
Okay. How about if we discuss the social problems as a class, since there was the almost unanimous of those who responded,
and statistics.
and then we can take a vote on that, and if that's not what people want, then they can vote against it. But at least
Yesterday too.
let's have a discussion, because my fear is if we keep revoting, then we won't push forward. So could we have a discussion about social problems? Or Melody, you have
Well, I
another?
just had one quick question for Dr. Mickey. Can these courses that exist in the ACGM, like SOCI 1306, can that then be cross-listed with social work 1306? So institutions would have the choice of offering it under social work or sociology?
If you feel the courses are really the same course,
Yeah,
you know,
so,
are close enough for the purposes of serving.
Social work 1306.
if you cross-list it, then it allows institutions to house more in social work. And I see, from my perspective, social problems is a great fit for that then we can approach it from the sociological/social work perspective. And then, so then institutions are allowed to, like, offer it within their own departments if they can, but if not, we can rely on our sociology colleagues to
Are
teach
you
that.
talking about making it a new entry in the ACGM?
Yes, as a cross list.
As a cross list?
That's what I'm asking.
Yes, I think you can do that.
So that community college would be able to offer it as a social work or sociology
Because you
credit?
can only offer ACGM courses, so
Right.
if it's in there, then you have the option of, I don't want to change it out of sociology, but then you have the option of, I really want possession of that class.
Like at my institution, I teach it.
And
Because I teach
so,
both. So they're getting the social work perspective whether they
right,
want
but
it or
that's
not.
not the same at
Yeah.
every
Right.
community college. But then you get those sociology students who may take it that then get the
Sociology
social
credit.
work perspective if a social worker is teaching it.
So then if it needs to get accepted at the university, it can get accepted under the social work, right?
Yes, yes. Or I can bring it in, it's equivalent, so I can bring it in. If I don't have social work 1306 at my institution, I still bring it in because we have 1306 in our catalog, so, yeah.
So
And
would that
if you had intro to sociology, that would not be a hard course to just substitute.
Right.
That would be an easy substitution for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it,
So would that benefit the university to cross-list it, or are we just talking about for the benefit of the community college to be able to teach another social work class?
you benefit both, wouldn't it?
I think it benefits both, and I would look at adjusting our curriculum to put that in. But I think it really benefits community colleges.
So are we talking now about that being the third social work class that is being?
I'm just throwing that out. Is that a possibility? That was one a lot of people that were able to vote. A lot of people voted that was a good one, but I think now the discussion about who else would put that in there I just wanted to know if that was possible.
It'd be project-based.
This is social problem.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm done.
I think that the value for social work is that a lot of students, because, I think it took a year of being highly interactive with our board of trustees and our chancellor for them to actually call me a social worker in the first breath. For the first year, they called me a sociologist every single time. And we've done surveying in the sociology courses, and the students don't see that as different. They don't have the language of social work. So I think the value is that it would really help students who think they're in I'm going to help people kind of class really understand that that's not the path that's going to lead to that. Because a lot of times they'll get a bachelor's degree, and that's why so many programs are full with those, long programs, because they just went the wrong route. They thought they were in the right place. They just don't have the language. Just my opinion.
Well, if I'm understanding correctly, from the four-year university perspective, it doesn't really matter to me whether it's a social work or a sociology course, because I'm going to slide it in under
Right.
intro to sociology,
Right.
probably regardless,
Yeah.
unless we change our curriculum, which is not totally up to me, unless we change our curriculum to start teaching social problems,
if
because we
we-
don't have it now. So cross-listing it would probably help the community colleges, but it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. Nita, you
But it
have-
would give you something that your faculty then could teach if you wanted to.
If we wanted to change.
add your-
Yes, if we
and-
wanted to add it.
And as long as we're teaching in that course, the sociological perspective of analysis, along with the social work, that sort of the historical sociological perspective, you're getting the bulk of what you'd be wanting from an intro to sociology class anyway.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
method,
that's
that
what
that mode
That's
of
exactly
thought.
what I'm saying,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'd be getting it whether it was intro or this, they're going to learn that sociological mode of thought and the social work approach, and you could maybe make that project-based. My students in problems always do projects. We always we do a community service project in the class and a university service or college service project in the class.
Nita, you look,
I'm trying to figure out how this would play back in Iowa. Because I've got an entire sociology department who would argue that they don't teach social work, they don't teach the history, they don't teach the philosophy, they don't teach the practice system sizes or settings or anything of that nature, so that these two courses would not be equivalent. And it goes back to the course descriptions for each in terms, for me, of where it should fall. So I get nervous about cross-listing my understanding of cross-listing is that there's supposed to be significant likeness. Is that not correct?
Yeah, they should be. It's tricky. I mean, there's an art to it, you know. Does it merit being a separate course with a separate name and separate learning objectives and description? Or is it the same course with students who will be in the same room with those sociology students with the same faculty member reading the same textbook? You know, is the difference 1 or 2 class periods difference in the spin that you would put on it for social work? Otherwise, it's the same class. Then perhaps there's another way to deliver that content to students in one of the other courses. Like if the difference between, I'm not an expert here, so forgive me if I'm way missing the point here. But is the difference between what the sociologists would do in social problems and what you would do in a course on social problems, is that difference enough that you could perhaps cover that same course material in the intro to social work class? And then you could keep the sociology course as it is and not have to cross-list it, not have to offer it with any faculty members from social work, but just keep the existing course that's already there, add a few more students to the existing class in sociology. And if you want the students to get that content, perhaps it can either be taught in social welfare as a social institution or in the intro class. You'd have to decide that.
I think cross-listing means that, you know, it's you are substituting. If it is taken in a community college, and that's you are considering it is equal, so they don't have to do that course here when they come. So that's what it means. Yeah.
We cross-list social psychology, for example.
No. When you are cross-listing to intro class, you are proposing cross-listing with the intro class, right? Intro to social work?
No, I threw out social problems. It was just a discussion point. I'm not invested in cross-listing it. I was looking at ways to enhance our community college partners in terms of offerings in social work, because that was part of the conversation yesterday. That's it.
I think it
Rebecca?
could work.
I'm trying to understand this. So if the third class for the community colleges decided to be social problems, then when they come to us, we could just substitute it for the sociology, intro to sociology.
That's what I would do at my
That's
institution.
that's what I'm thinking would work. So there wouldn't have to be a cross list.
Yeah, they can.
It would be y'all's third class, and then when they come to us, that's where we could plug those hours in at. And it really wouldn't change anything else, correct?
Are there credential problems for faculty who can teach in social work but not in sociology, or vice versa?
Yes.
Yes.
Having it be a social work class would give the community colleges much more flexibility in being able to have staffing. We only have me and one adjunct right now, for example, in social work. We are both qualified in both. So we're okay. We're uniquely flexible. But the majority of our adjuncts have had not at all the ability to teach sociology. So if it were a cross list, and let's say that the university, which like they sometimes do, wanted to assign me to a committee and have me do this, and so I was going to have to be released. If there were a cross list, I could have a social worker cover that class for me and keep it.
Well, we may need to check and see how many, because your college doesn't offer
We offer social problems, as
Okay.
a sociology class, and I can teach it. But I'm just saying other schools might not be able to teach it. They could offer it as a social. Olivia, you could offer it as a social worker, but not as a sociologist, right? And we've got that sitting here in this room right now with only, so few schools. I think cross-listing it might be the way for the community colleges to be able to offer it And if it's something that we know that the four-year schools could receive, and we'd be able to meet some of our objectives.
Joanne?
I'd just like to say I agree with that. I think that cross-listing would really be helpful for us in terms of offering it and having some say over what goes into that.
When you cross-list a course, does the course carry the same name under both?
It can. I mean, the simplest way to do it is just take the exact same course and just give it two different course numbers.
The prefix is the only thing that changes.
The prefix and a new course number, and then have everything else be exactly
So the course number would be the same in sociology and social work, or it would be different? And it would carry the same name? The course would carry the same name in both departments?
Right.
It just would be SOCW/SOCI 1306 social
Right.
problems.
That's how it.
You give it a different number. I mean, if that number wasn't available, I mean, you could give it a different number. Or in the mysteries of how courses are numbered, I mean, there's an elaborate,
Rhyme or reason.
yes, alchemy that goes on about how to number a course that I don't know. So if it has a different course number, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, it could just have a different prefix. It could be like a course that's offered, you can call it either kinesiology or physical education. It's the same course, just a different tag.
So to cross-list that course, then we would ditch the collaborative or whatever we're going to call that?
Well, because we would have to add this to the ACGM as a social work class. It's not there, and that's why we don't offer it as social work, because it's not there.
But if, I mean, I do understand the cross-listing, but if it's put into the ACGM as either or,
And then we probably wouldn't be doing the academic cooperative project, whatever that is.
and so if
Let's
if it's cross-listed, then we're still at the same place because the sociologists will teach that course, not social work from that perspective. Is that right? So we're still kind of in the same place.
Not if you put it on your degree plan as SOCW and said you needed it to be a social work.
But
We
if
would
it's
be the ones writing the objectives.
If it's included in the field of study, could we put it as an either-or option in the field of study, or would they have to be awarded social work credit? Could it be, if it's cross-listed in the ACGM, can it be listed as an either-or on the field of study?
Well, if it's cross-listed, I think either or would be kind of redundant, because if a college only offered the
Right.
sociology version of it,
Right,
then
okay,
the students could take that one and that would count towards the field of
okay.
study.
Yes, that's what I was wondering.
Colleges, I suppose, would have to decide if they want to offer the social work version of it or the sociology or both. I guess you could offer both, right, with social work having the social work spin on it. In that case, it would, well, that's an interesting question. I guess you would want to avoid that either or, because if you offer it as both the social work and sociology, you would want your students to take the social work version of it. If they messed up and took the sociology version of it, or if your social work section was full, or for some reason, then I don't know what would happen.
Well,
I
they may-
suppose the student would still get credit for that towards the field of
Well,
study.
if you had somebody
although-
who decided late in their career that they wanted to take those social work classes, if they'd already taken it the other way, I wouldn't make them take it again. You'd be able to help them
exactly.
They
out.
come to us with Sociology 1306 when they decide they want to be a social work major, and that happens frequently, that
Right.
they've
If
taken
it's-
some
If it's
electives.
cross-listed, then that means you can take it either way. And I think if a student took the sociology version, you'd have to accept that even if the social work version was available.
I like the idea that it allows us to offer a social work class at the freshman level and get them actually at the freshman level. Our courses right now are at the sophomore level. They're 2,300. And to give them students sometimes don't know yet, but sometimes they do know when they arrive that this is where their interest is, and be able to have them get right off the bat that class, that take on things, and that hands-on sort of project-based experience, which social problems is such a fit for, whether you're calling it soci or social work, to get them at the beginning. because it's exciting, it's motivating.
Nita?
So just because I hear the piece about the hands-on experience, and not everyone teaches the 1306 with some kind of hands-on project. So then are we, because again, if we're cross-listing, or not we, but if it's cross-listed,
Yeah.
and one group is going to have this hands-on experience and one group is not going to have this hands-on experience, but we're going to say the courses are,
Similar.
what are we doing?
Equivalent, yes.
Yeah, they're not
Well,
equivalent.
Uniform syllabus?
In the ACGM, you have to describe how the sociological imagination can be used to imagine the emergence and implications of contemporary problems, explain the nature of problems from at least one perspective, identify multi-directional, discuss solutions within a diverse society, all the values and everything, and then describe proposed solutions, including social policies, and how that can cause other social problems. So that's what we would be teaching, because that's the description. And unless we altered the description, you would not have to teach it with that sort of with an applied bias, which is, I teach it with an applied bias. And a lot of us do, but not everybody does. Application of sociological principles and theoretical perspectives to major social problems in contemporary society, such as inequality, crime and violence, substance abuse, environmental issues, deviance, family problems. You can see where it's a good fit with background for social work. And so maybe what we, I don't know, would we want to, before we cross-listed it, would we want to make everybody have to teach it with a project, or just allow those of us who do to keep doing it in our...
Just like other courses that are taught, intro to sociology, some teachers teach it with a project, some don't. Some teachers require volunteer work, some don't.
Some
The
require term
description would need to
papers,
be the
some
same
don't.
if it's cross-listed, correct? Even if we leave the project-based piece out of the description, that doesn't mean that someone can't require project-based learning in their class. There's a lot of freedom on how to deliver that content from one professor to the next, even teaching the same course in other fields.
I think it's fair to students, though, for them to know what they're getting into.
Correct, yes.
Because it's very different to say we're going to do an experiential project or a hands-on something versus I think I'm signing up for 15 weeks of lecture.
Well, it certainly would need to be addressed in the syllabus that's posted online, and that's where they find most of the course requirements from one teacher to the next anyways, and how they're different, how they're the same.
I was very happy to see my colleague Rebecca Mosley walk in the room.
Yay,
Rebecca is the coordinating board's keeper of the ACGM, and she can answer the questions much better than I can about the pros and cons and nature and procedures of cross-listing. Rebecca, what they've been talking about is there's a really good course in sociology 1306, social problems. And the discussion on the table is, what if they were to create a cross-listed version of that course, identical or nearly identical to it, teaching it from the social work perspective with a social work prefix that would allow social work faculty to teach it as well as sociology faculty. Do you have any thoughts on that?
How do I know? Is this on?
That green flashing?
Yeah, it's
Okay, you're good.
okay. The ACGM committee does not recommend cross-listing because of confusion for students, where they may go to two different institutions and it's listed under sociology at one institution and social work, and they're interested in the topic. Oh, I want to take another course. Self-advising happens. And so the ACGM committee discourages it. I'm not going to say you can't do it, but there's a reason why it's not very frequently done in there. Okay. Hey.
Would an option be to to create a new ACGM course with very similar content? Would that be easier or better for students? I mean, there are precedents for that, aren't there? I mean, there are courses in the ACGM under two different prefixes and two different course numbers that are kind of the same course, like in public speaking.
I think that maybe drugs, the drug and abuse one is in health, but then it's also in another one, and I forget which one it is, maybe.
Kinesiology.
Kinesiology, and then there's another one.
Criminal
That,
justice or something.
and the perspectives are different. You know, so if they could use 1306, this group could use 1306 as kind of a model and then put that kind of spin on it, but it would just be listed in the social work. It wouldn't be cross-listed.
So if they took both, they would get credit for both.
Yeah, so I mean, that's problematic too, making them too similar. If you like, this course, you can put it in your field of study as a sociology course.
Go ahead,
I
Lisa.
was just going to ask, the kinesiology is the same as the sociology 2340, right? The two drug courses? Is that?
I think the sociology or the kinesiology people, maybe they said they didn't want it to be the same.
The social is 2340 and
Yeah.
the kinesiology is PhD 1346.
Are those two examples of what we're talking about? I just want to make sure I understand. And do you have others? I know it's rare, but I just want to know, like, when have disciplines made that decision where they thought it was?
Okay, the kinesiology folks made that decision that they're going to take one approach that's going to be different. So they, at that point, it was when the learning outcomes group met. We couldn't, the kinesiology people couldn't create a course or develop learning outcomes for a sociology course because you wanted to hear from sociology professors to see what there was. So they're not cross-listed, even though it's the same. And I do see it creating problems for students if they were to take the same course. I don't have any evidence that has happened, but I can see with self-advising and that it might.
And I can see where like both of those courses are different because we offer both of those courses, the drug use and abuse in the kinesiology department, and they look at the person, right, and the effects it has. And in sociology, when we teach those courses, we look at the ramifications of and how the environment may bring about drug abuse. We're looking at the bigger picture, not so much towards the individual like they do in kines. So they are two different courses.
Okay, given this information, what do you guys want to do with the social problems course? Do we still want to consider it, or?
I'd just say one thing. If we do the social problems course opposed to the practic or the service learning piece, and we add the service learning piece to social problems, aren't we still at the same place? Because we offer something in intro, we'll offer something in the social welfare, and so we're still offering practicums or service learning in each of our three classes and not getting credit for it, opposed to having the place where we get credit for that work. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Okay. So can we put the social problems discussion on hold just for a second?
Okay.
And now let's go and talk about the cooperative project or the cooperative course.
Social work 2363, which
Yeah.
would
Yes.
also have to be created, but we'd use the sociology as the model. Right? Well, I mean, we'd use the fact that we've got it in sociology. What we're doing is we're looking at sociology of 2393. 2389, whatever it is, academic cooperative. An instructional program designed to integrate on-campus study with practical hands-on experience in social work. If we called it a cooperative, we would not be calling it an internship, and we would not be calling it a practicum. So it wouldn't run afoul of the idea that we're trying to move practica out of upper level. Whether or not that would meet, I don't know what it would do for you all in terms of what competencies we're going to cover and how you would show that later to CSWE. But we at least wouldn't be calling it something that we're not allowed to call it.
Isn't the practicum, my idea that the practicum is the experiential part and the internship is the actual field work? Am I misunderstanding that, or we just have a common term for practicum where it covers everything?
I think by
that makes
calling it a
difference.
cooperative, it's real clear that we're not trying to do an advanced practica. But we are going to do something that would be service learning, hands-on, from a definite, and we would replace sociological with a social work approach.
So saying it's a pre-practicum is because of the common term or common definition of the term. The students like to hear they're in a pre-practicum for our college because it elevates what they're already doing. They feel a real big, strong validity that they're participating in a pre-practicum. They are not, doing any kind of treatment. They're not doing anything. They're really shadowing a social worker, but the definition itself is not the internship. And I feel like that's where we kind of get clogged up a little bit.
I think that's taken care of because all the four-year institutions have to do is identify where they do their assessment. Mm-hmm. And as long as they're clear that they do their assessment in their senior level field, then
it can be a practicum or pre-practicum, or it can be anything else. Got it.
So we call it pre-practicum. I've never used that term, but
yeah, I use it. I just did because students really dig it. I'm serious. Junior college students really feel. I think maybe I'll speak for mine that it's a down position in a way to have a social work major at an AA degree and have two courses where people really feel like, well, you're not even in social work, you shouldn't be taking that because you don't get that until you get to the BSW and MSW programs. But a pre-practicum helps elevate that. And, they take an ownership and a more of a commitment to that. And the field places, of course, for me, they're informal. They're networks that I've created that they've agreed to allow the students to go and shadow a social worker. They dig it too because now it's not just like a volunteer thing where there's 100 people every week, different volunteers. They've got a consistency to that. And so it helps students with, I think even your point, Martha, that once they leave junior college, even if they don't transfer right then to a 4-year, they've already made connections, important connections and networks in the community. So it feels like it hits all the marks that we're trying to make. That's just my opinion, but I don't know that we should move away from that.
I wonder if service learning may be a more broad title that might be appealing to more or students from other areas who then get interested in social work as a result of those experiences. I don't know.
But isn't the service learning though, Nita, I thought, how I understand it is the difference between the service learning and a practicum is service learning is actually a project. Like my students went down to the valley and built water stations and put water stations out, opposed to those students who went to work, at the Boys and Girls Club or went to work at Raices or something like that where they shadowed a social worker about the practice, the work that they do to kind of get a sense about that. And you're saying in the 2363 offering to put those two together?
I don't know.
Okay.
I thought the definition of service learning was it was reciprocal, that the student gets something out of it in terms of not necessarily growth, but they get something back in response to giving something.
Like
as opposed to
something.
Right, yes, but as a practicum, I thought was more they're giving, yes, our students get something back, but I think with service learning, at least from our campus definition, we have to define what the student is going to get back from this experience as well. So it's more of a reciprocal
I do
relationship.
think the term service learning is kind of a buzz term that means something very specific to some people, so we probably should be a little bit careful. But I do like the idea of naming the course something more specific to what they're doing, rather than using the generic academic cooperative. We have academic cooperatives in other disciplines,
Right.
and the first thing they ask is, what is this? What does that mean? You know, what is this? What am I taking? And it actually means something different depending on the department that they're in.
Right.
So it would be nice to have just a course that's if we're going to add a course specific to the department, give it a unique number and a unique name that fits what we're doing.
May I speak
Sure.
to the academic cooperatives? They're supposed to be very customized to the student. So it's not like you would have a set agenda for every student who did this. It's very student-driven, faculty and student. So the projects are going to be, or the activities are going to be different depending upon the student.
Each individual student.
Each individual
10 students would have
student. So you wouldn't have a group of 10 students
Right.
all doing the same thing.
Which is more
It
like
is like
service
independent
learning,
study,
where
yeah.
they
That's
most
the
of them would-
intent of the academic
Okay.
cooperative.
Yeah, it's confusing.
So
But I
like to
think
see a unique
traditionally, that's what we
course.
do though, isn't it? I mean, the students, usually they have a list of agencies, and maybe Nita could speak to this, because I think you're one who's doing this now. But, you know, the students have a list of agencies they choose, they arrange their hours, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really more like a cooperative.
Yeah.
I think we're not talking about it that way, because we started talking about service learning. But traditionally in social work, I think that's exactly how the volunteer experience is what we usually call it, is put together, is structured. No? No? That's
No, I'm
not
just
how yours
wondering,
is done?
so you teach a course that you're
I don't
saying,
teach it, no.
And it's attached to
Offer a
another
course.
course, right?
Our intro course
Right.
is taught like
Actually,
that.
Our intro course.
My
Yeah.
intro, they
Intro
have 30
course.
hours
Right, of
that
something.
each
Right.
student gets to go and volunteer, and they set it up on their own time based on their schedule.
And their interests and.
So even when we have transfer students that come in, they've had intro, but they haven't had praxis, which is our 30 hours. So they have to then take those 30 hours. We'll take their intro, but they still have to go do those 30 hours.
But if they come from me, they've had 35.
Right, but if they don't, they still have to take it.
Because it's in my course description.
Yeah, but it's not for all the students who transfer. The ones who don't.
how common
have
is
to
that
take it.
for them to either have it or not have it, those praxis hours?
I would say each semester we may have maybe 10 students who've transferred in with intro but don't have the hours. Out of maybe a cohort of 30.
So if they transfer, if we put these 3 courses in the field of study, Intro to Social Work, Social Welfare, and then this other course that's being created that requires those hours, if they come in with those, with intro and the course that requires the hours, are they getting 6 credit hours somewhere in the plan? They would get 6 credit hours somewhere in the plan, but then the praxis hours would also be met, so it's going to take care of that problem.
Yeah, if they have that.
It's going to take care of that problem across the board, because everybody will be following that same curriculum at every
Everybody
community
can, exactly.
college.
There was some questions.
Oh, yeah, this is what I'm doing, As part of this intro to social work, all students are required to complete at least 20 hours of service learning component.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we take that away and put it into the cooperative.
It sounds to me like the community colleges need to be doing something to align better with what the requirements are by the universities, because not all of these intro classes are requiring these hours. So it really would benefit us all and the students to add another course where we can integrate those hours, so they're coming in having taken 3 of our courses, but also having met your praxis hour requirements. It's going to give more consistency across the board in community colleges for them to have that coming in.
Lisa?
I had to adjust my syllabus a couple of years ago because the university is not represented here in this committee, but they would not accept our 2362 on transfer unless it had 50 hours of service learning included. 50. And I think, I support that. I'm an ethical practitioner, and I think it's unethical to have just pick and pull these 2 classes and call it an associate's degree in social work. That's not an associate's degree in anything. it's great that they have the exposure, but I think it would really require community colleges to rise to the occasion, and if they're going to teach those classes, they would have to do it in a way that is appropriate for the field, and I think that's a big improvement.
So then the question is using whether we use the academic cooperative name and number or create a new number that's unique to social work that includes those hours in the description.
My question for the group, or for the universities, do you put it in your intro class, that part?
Yes. Not everyone.
I think everybody's
doing
different.
It's all
even on the university, it's not across.
Not all
different because we have a 50-hour 62. We have a 50-hour service learning class where they're
separate from your intro.
Separate from intro, so we do not have volunteer component in intro.
How many hours do they do in that service learning class?
50.
And how
What's the
many credit
requirement?
hours?
It's a 3 credit hour class, and it begins a sequenced project, and so they start there and they have 4 semesters where this project builds and they end up with an end product, so it's quite intensive.
Rachel, it seemed like we started the discussion about the cooperative or the project, because those of us that do add the service learning or whatever we're calling it in the intro and in the welfare course, we're doing it and not getting credit for those hours. And it's a lot of work. I think, Martha, you have 30 or 40 students to try to manage all that. Even though we allow students to try to pick and choose, like find an agency yourself, there's something about that, to your point, Lisa, that just feels, I don't know, they're blowing in the wind that we haven't said this agency's great. And so I feel like responsibility to that. But, that's just to give you that background.
I'm going to call to your attention Education 1301, which is for teacher education. It requires that they have 16 contact hours of field experience in a P12 classroom. So if you wanted to put something like that in your intro, you could do that. And then we could consider maybe bumping up the contact hours to take care of some of that. I'm just throwing out an option.
You mean do what we're doing now, still do the same thing? Because those of us who have intro classes we offer that. But
well, you could write it into as a component of your description, and then we could develop learning outcomes for that. The learning outcomes group could. I'm just suggesting an option. I don't know if that would work for you or not.
Right.
I'm just saying, this is what some other discipline has done.
About the contact hours instead of creating a third course.
No, I'm thinking that because we're doing lots of extra work in the intro class, and if we separate out that learning piece, the service learning piece, and put it in this 2363, and then somehow then in that cooperative, combining those works that we would do in the intro and the policy course to make that the specific piece of
I
that.
don't like requiring students to do 50, 60 hours of contact and give them no other credit than the 3-hour class they're already in. So I'm requiring all of the work for the course, and then 50 hours. And they're not getting a lab credit. They're getting nothing.
Well, there's the flip side of that is that students come in with too many credit hours, and then they have a penalty. They hit a point where they hit a penalty, and probably community colleges you don't have to deal with students who have hit that limit where they're suddenly paying out-of-state tuition. So there's a consequence for going either way, making sure that they have credit hours to cover this activity or being economical with the credit hours so that they're not penalized later on. There's 2 sides of that issue.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I think that the conversation keeps going like this, not because no one's trying, everybody's trying, I think. I guess what I'm wondering is, it felt like yesterday, it felt like at points today, that everyone kind of understands that the community colleges are not asking for 18 hours of content in social work. That's just not even what, I didn't come here with that in mind at all, not even close to that. It also seemed like everybody was pretty accepting of the idea that the content right now is anemic and needs something additional. It felt like back and forth that the social work cooperative seemed to make sense for what we do. Is it possible that instead of trying to rename it or find some, could we all agree that this is going to sound crazy maybe. Why couldn't we put it in the way it is? And then if this is indeed a rigorous process that we're going through, where we're not making snap decisions, but we're also agreeing that we may need to revisit it in a year or 2 years or 3, couldn't we put it in the way it is instead of changing it? Create SLOs that meet what everybody's asking for and call it done.
So there's no change to the number, I mean.
Yeah, I
Social
mean,
work 2389, academic cooperative. Is that what
so
you're referring
it's
to?
2363 here, but I don't know if is that a typo? Or you know it to be 89?
Well, it's SOCI 2389.
Well, the academic cooperative number in the course guide manual across disciplines is 2389.
89 is what it would be.
2363 it does not exist.
I got it.
We got.
So 2389 would be the
2389 is the academic cooperative universal number in all
For sociology.
disciplines.
and we can
In all
put-
disciplines.
Okay.
No matter what the discipline is. That's the it's just they just changed the prefix.
So it would be SOCW 2389.
If it's going to be the academic cooperative, it would be SOCW
Okay.
2389.
Okay, got it. That's my question.
Yes.
Okay. Yesterday, just from the four-year institution perspective, where we would put this, and Rebecca and I talked about 2 places we thought we could put it. It could, of course, go as an elective. But the other thing is we're being required now for students to have it's called a path.
Component, it's a component, what was it? I sent it to you, do you remember? Something component option. We call it their pathway.
Yeah.
It's what
That's in the core.
yes, it's in the core. And we were thinking we could slip this into there if we needed
But
to.
our students are going to come with our component area core course also, which is academic learning frameworks.
Learning framework.
So
We all have to have it.
So our community college already has filled that spot with another course, and they'll come
Oh, I
with that
see.
as well to complete their core at TJC.
1300 or something like
It's
that.
EDUC 1300, which
Yeah.
is a learning frameworks course.
It's so it's a 3-hour course?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and we're,
Started with it. Hostel experiences.
No, it's a step.
So if they come
We
with-
have a list of courses we can fit into that for our students.
Well,
Um,
I think it's a local decision.
Yeah,
What to put in that
Mhm.
spot. So.
but if they came
our
with it,
school
then we're
has
still
made
looking
that
at in excess of 3 hours.
Yes. That's a part of the core. So if they come core complete, then that component will have been met.
yeah, and that's been added, that we just got out of curriculum committee. Our institution has learning frameworks, and I believe it's taught in a variety of disciplines, and they're getting it.
But remembering we're a state with 31 schools of social work, 31 BSW programs, and we have, how many people in the room? 15
Yeah.
people in the
And
room?
all colleges fill their core with something, and
Yeah.
that just happens to be a flexible core option. But all colleges have something in that spot.
I was actually agreeing with you. I'm sorry I didn't say it well, but like, I think if it doesn't work in one place, it doesn't mean don't do it.
Yes.
Oh, right. It's just we have to decide
Yeah.
where it'll fit into our program.
Yeah. We're calling it a student success seminar. That's the university's name.
Yeah, and I don't know that this
Would be any
cooperative project
different,
would
be
be.
any
Learning
different?
frameworks better fits that.
Yeah, I don't think that a cooperative
Anyways.
project is necessarily your student success seminar, because a student success seminar tends to be organized around student behaviors that would be common to all fields.
Well, the way we've organized it, because now the units are responsible for it, so in social work, what we've done is create a 2-hour course that will be more on social work type content. And then a 1-hour course, which is what the university requires, that we put all the conduct and all of that into. So I was thinking that this could go in there, but I didn't know about this.
If you put the
The learning
social work
component.
course there, then our learning frameworks would have to go somewhere else, and that's going to be a harder course to
Yeah.
find a place to.
Well, I
fit.
didn't know that you guys were doing this,
Yeah.
so, okay.
And I think probably all colleges are. doing
Olivia?
something.
Olivia, you had a comment?
Yes, so if we're trying to get credit for the hours that we do, whether practical or service learning, so not only us, but the students get credit for that, aren't cooperatives attached to a class themselves? Like history has one, and the things they do in that cooperative are based on what they learned in the history class, right? So what would be the difference here to make sure that what Martha's point is, and many of ours here at this table, is that we want to make sure students have some sort of experience and meat on the bone of their social work AA.
Okay, but the other part of what we're trying to do is figure out how students can use all the 60 hours at the university, at the 4-year university level. And so what I think that we're all trying to do is figure out
where they can go.
You know, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I totally agree. And I said yesterday, we often advise our students, go back and get your associate's degree because you're only, 10 hours away, and go get that. So we are very supportive of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are a little less concerned about, them going to work after they get that, and because that's the charge we've been given. And we're trying to focus really on how we will make sure, because I see that as our responsibility, make sure that whatever we agree to, that we can put it someplace and make sure that the students don't waste money, time, effort, etc. So that's why I was just bringing that up, because I'm just trying to make sure that every time we
always get to there and we go like this.
Yes. Yes, because we're going to have to make some changes too, and I just want to make sure that we all understand what, on behalf of other 4-year institutions, we're agreeing to.
Yeah, because I feel like, I'm in my college, I know the college itself supports the social program, but until the program itself and classes are off, more girth, one of the ways you can get that legitimacy is here with the FOSs. And so if we miss out on that, I'm worried that, I know for my college, the solid commitment to the degree continues to weaken, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, students already notice that, if students can figure it out themselves, we have to help them not feel like they're getting a down degree or something, like that. So I'm not sure how to get to that.
Was your question also how to make sure that they have that good social work background before they're out there in the field?
Yes, because
I think the way I would handle that would be with prerequisites.
That would be outside of what I could do. Our
Well,
university hasn't
when you propose the class or when you add it to your curriculum, add it with the prerequisite that they have to have had Social Work 2361 as the prerequisite for Social Work 2389. And then, it's just a prerequisite. Like they can't take calculus until they've had a passing score somewhere in an algebra. And when you look in the curriculum, there are prerequisites.
Right.
So if we just had a prerequisite that 2361 had to be done before 2389, they could do it concurrent with 2362. But you wouldn't have students who had never done anything at all and had no knowledge of what it was about in the class. You'd have them having had that exposure to the history and the ethics and everything. Because again, would we want to put them out there? It would have to be concurrently enrolled at least.
Lisa?
Can I ask an ACGM question? If this is ignorant, forgive me. Would the 2389 cooperative have SLOs?
Would it have what?
Would it have SLOs?
No, because it's so customized to the students. We don't do that. Now, if you were to create a course specific to social work with the new number 2363, then you could do that.
Okay.
But if you're going with the academic cooperative, it's so customized that no, we would not, because you're not going to tell what the student is going to learn. The student and the faculty member working together are going to develop that.
I love this description in conjunction with class seminars.
Yes.
Because to have your students understand, we don't have regular classes, we have seminar.
Right.
And
just Rebecca, Nyla, Nita, where would you, if they created this course, where would you put it? Oh, and I'm sorry, Melody.
know, probably elective, I mean,
Well, if I, excuse me, if I heard right, if they come in without the volunteer credits, you have them retake.
Praxis.
they have to take the practice.
So
This would be
if they
praxis.
came in with this, they wouldn't then have to retake that, right?
Possibly,
Is
yeah.
Praxis 1 credit hour, or is it any, how's it?
I think
what do
I think it's a credit hour
Ah, okay.
I think we
that's
might,
attached to the intro class.
It's a co-requisite. They
Yeah.
get
I think we might look at reworking that lower level HBSE. That could include part of the components of this, so it would make it interchangeable and not totally disrupt the current curriculum, but make it interchangeable to work for both our students and the students who transfer in. That would be a possibility.
I'm not sure I get quite, because wouldn't
Yeah,
your
what-
students still have to
still have
take
to take
HBSC though?
It would still be that, but maybe we could make it compatible in some way in terms of having them do the hours or whatever it turns out. Well, but that's
They
not going
wouldn't
to
be
have
getting
service
the human
learning outcomes.
development
Yeah, it
from
won't
the
work.
service learning class.
It won't work.
Melody, what's your thought on it?
We have 7 hours of general electives that can be any level. And so it would probably go there. We would not have our Stephenville students would not have an equivalent course.
Yeah,
I don't think we would either.
ours wouldn't either.
I would either put it as a general elective, or what I would like to do, if we can get it done, is actually have a course for it in my curriculum. So that all students, even the ones I have now, who are doing it in conjunction with intro and legislation, have a specific course, and it can come out of those courses.
Okay, so what is the consensus about having the cooperative course? And I'm just using the words that are on
Right.
paper right now. We may want to change it. Don't anybody throw anything at me. But what is, it sounds like there's consensus, at least from people who've been most vocal, that we support having a cooperative course as part of the FOS. Yes, no? Yes, Lisa?
I just want to
Are we
raise
taking
for yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm making my,
Oh, I
Okay,
support.
so could I have a motion?
I make a motion to include a cooperative course in the FOS.
Okay. Is there a second?
Mr. Popsolid?
All right. Is there any more discussion? One thing we didn't talk about, but maybe we need to wait till after the motion, is whether this would be 1, 2, or 3 hours.
So the motion is to add that suggestion that having a intro class as a prerequisite?
No,
With
no,
that,
no, no.
we are not.
The motion is to add the cooperative course as part of the FOS.
I suggest
At
that,
3 hours?
that hour, I think you're really smart, and I think that needs to be clear before we vote, because I just want to make sure that,
Well, that may be a whole other discussion too.
the credit hours.
If you did it as a 1 hour, could you call it a lab and attach it to intro to social work? That's a wild idea.
We could, but that's what I was, I don't have any
The 1
preset
hour
ideas. I was
doesn't
just saying we
exist
didn't
in the
decide.
ACGM. The 1 hour does not exist
So
in
it's
the
2 and a
ACGM.
3 are already
It's
there.
2 or 3.
2289
I think
and
it is better to
2389.
be 3 hours.
I
That
agree.
is easy to substitute than
Right.
2 hours,
Yes.
1 hour. It creates a lot of
Agreed.
issues.
So we're all shaking our head
class.
yes. So
Yes.
is there a friendly amendment to the motion that's been
Friendly
made?
amendment that it be a 3-hour
Yep.
class.
Do we
it
vote on
be
that friendly? Okay, we say
23?
that, but we vote, okay. All right, so are we ready to vote on the motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Daniel, you want to read it to us one more time?
Rebecca has motioned to add a cooperative course in the FOS as a 3-hour course, a 3-hour class.
All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, Yes, we have 3 classes now. All right.
This would be adding a course to the ACG.
Right.
Yes.
Social work.
Now, you realize that that's gonna slow things down.
That's okay.
I don't think this would be much of an issue because it's kind of a standard thing for all the disciplines. You're just adding it to your discipline. We already have this operational and so I don't think it's a real problem. It will have to be approved by the ACGM committee. They're meeting April 30th. We might even have to delay into the fall meeting if your field of study isn't approved before that point. But I think within this, by the first fall meeting, it could be in there.
All right.
Rebecca, do you need this committee to provide a sample text of the course description?
If they're happy with the description for cooperatives, which give so much flexibility to students and faculty, there isn't a need. And that's what I've heard here, that you're okay with the description as is.
We are
and it would
already
be consistent
individualizing
with
so much.
what's already there.
So-
Just use the one for sociology. They're pretty standard. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay, so this would more than likely have the same course number as the academic cooperative in sociology, right? We just have prefixes.
It would be, yeah, we just add it with that prefix.
So we wouldn't have the SOCW 2363?
2389.
It would be 2389.
2389.
2389.
Okay. Should we go back to our discussion of social problems, or do you want to move on to talking about intro to sociology and intro to psychology, which we talked about yesterday? And statistics, I'm sorry.
I'd like to recommend that we take a vote on statistics so we can feel like we got something done.
Okay.
Something else done.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd like to move that the field of study include a college-level statistics course in math or psychology.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
I think it's a really good idea.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion? All right, Daniel, could you read the motion to us one more time?
A motion has been made to add either a mathematics or psychology statistics class to the social work FOS.
Okay. All in favor? All opposed? I forgot I'm not supposed to vote.
I feel very strongly about it.
Anybody abstain? Well, we have a
Look at us zooming on through.
Okay, all right. Yes, we have 4.
It's amazing.
I'm so excited.
Now, you could, if this is a situation where I suppose you could do an either or, if you specified, if you wanted to.
Melody, we voted while you were out of the room, sorry.
For stats.
Okay.
Let's redo it.
No, it's all right.
Now,
Go ahead.
The
Move,
statistics will
please.
count towards the core, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the statistics would be in the core.
But it would also allow those institutions that have a particular math course,
Yeah.
I mean, it could go either way and still work for you.
Right,
And-
and
and I
the
would
motion was very
recommend-
definitely an either or.
Yeah, and I would recommend that you just put Math 1342 or Psych 2317, since those are the ACGM numbers, and say that a
Makes it
choice of
easier.
those. And it's in the field of study as opposed to trying to fit it into core. If the institution allows it in core, good. If they require that the student have college algebra or quantitative methods, that can still go too.
What have you got as
The numbers are 1342 for the math one and 2317 for the psych.
Are there any others? Any
1342 and what's the size?
2317.
Right now.
Yes, we should.
And it seems like the psych would be the more appropriate for social work.
1342?
Okay,
These are the only two.
do we need a break?
Well, that's why I was out of the room.
We need a break.
Okay, let's take about a 10-minute break.
That's good.
Okay. All right, for those in the broadcast room, we'll adjourn until 10:15.
Why am I?
Okay, if we could go ahead and get restarted.
I think they do it. I don't think that's.
Okay, so far we have 4 classes or 4 courses approved as part of the FOS. So here's my, my question to you. We could be done. We don't have to be done, but we could be done.
Could be done?
We could be done. We have the math part of the core. We have the social work courses, and then we have the math part of the core. We could do the social service part of the core if we want to do that. That would be the intro to sociology, intro to psychology, or some other course if you guys wanted to look at that.
You're talking the social behavioral science?
He called it social science core.
Yeah,
Behavioral sciences,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
480.
So what do you guys want to do? Do we want to just say we're done, or do you want the only, well, not the only, but the most probably appropriate direction for us would be the social science part of the core. But we could just leave that alone because most programs require intro to sociology and intro to psychology.
You can take another look at that handout I gave you yesterday, which is the breakdown of the number of the courses that are most frequently taught in that not terribly scientific sample that I gave you of the 10 top receiving institutions.
Thank you.
Right after Intro to Social Work, the 2 most frequently taught courses at the lower division are Intro to Sociology and Intro to Psychology, which I'm assuming are there to fill the social and behavior science part of the course.
I think probably because I feel like sociology and psychology theory are kind of foundational to social work
Thinking.
practice. I personally like the idea of adding the behavioral science option to the field of study through one of these courses. I would like to add the other as well. But that is really kind of something that I'd like to hear from the universities on, because those are 2 courses that fit the core in the same spot.
What's
Can
the
I
other?
add on to that?
A sociology and a psychology.
But you said the other. I just want to make sure I know what you mean by that.
What
She
did I
means
say?
One or the other.
one or the
Oh,
other,
one or
or
the other.
both.
Yes,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
She's saying she'd be open to maybe to the idea of one or the other, although she'd
Okay.
prefer both. Am I saying that correctly?
I would like to see one or the other to fill the behavioral science core,
Got it.
but
I would.
I'd like to hear from the universities about whether or not it's feasible to require both in the field of study.
And can I add onto that I really would like to see one or the other, so that we're not ending up having to accept intro to criminal justice.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that there's nothing wrong with criminal justice and a social worker who's going to go on in criminal justice, but they can do that. They can decide how they might want to specialize much later in their career. If they're going to move into a bachelor program, I would far rather see them get that exposure at the 4,000 level than, and let them have that basic underpinning of the foundational theory of either social psych or both.
From university's perspective, is
Well, Melody, I think, was going to comment on
Yeah,
that.
from the university perspective, I hear you say intro to social work is in your behavioral sciences core.
Right.
Because the core for each institution is determined by the institution. So if we put in both sociology and psychology, and you already have intro to social work in your core, you then have to deal with 2 electives coming into your 4-year program.
Right.
Because neither one of those are going to count towards core.
Right.
They can, but they aren't necessarily going to count towards, they aren't going to fulfill core at
Right.
Arlington. So putting in both, I think they need both, but putting in both is problematic for our transfer students where they only have 3 hours of core 80 or that social behavioral sciences core. And so if we put in 6 hours of that, that's automatically bumping 3 to 6 hours to electives,
Right.
which we already have talked about we don't have
okay.
in our curriculum.
I think we should continue with the idea of having social problems, because see, the social workers don't need intro to psych, intro to sociology per se, because it is more about sociology. What it's an introductory course to those who are going to major in sociology and psychology. We deal with human problems and issues, and how these social foundations help understanding the problems. That is more relevant to social workers than just studying the field of psychology and sociology. So we are applied science, and we address the issues, problems of the people and families, and so on and so forth. So we need more. What are the issues out there, and the range of issues, not just one or two. So at least they get a good exposure of the social problems, a range of problems, and they can teach in a community context also, if possible, locally, regionally, state-wise, what are the issues and what are the problems, and that provides good context. And then we can take from there to teach how a social worker, what social worker can do about these problems.
Okay. Any other comments?
I was just going back to your question about the university. We require both sociology and intro, or sociology and psychology. So
Yes, me too. We need both.
they are
psychology and
department
sociology.
requirements for
Intro
us.
for both.
Yeah.
So we're unique.
But that is most of the time that is covered in the core. If they have done it, that's fine. But this social, if you are thinking about field of study, that's where I would take social problems, because that would give them good exposure to social problems, human problems.
And would that be an easy course substitution for 1301? Could those of you that have 1301 and intro to psychology, there's general psychology, would you be able to substitute 1306 if it were in our core for your current requirement that they have 1301 in sociology? If we put that in our field of study, could you make that substitution so that it wouldn't be in addition to the other two? Because we're running out of room on a 60-hour total degree. We're running out of room on the degree plan, and I agree that we need to make sure that sociology and/or psychology are in there in that field of study. So I'm asking the universities, could you take 06 instead of 01?
Melody?
It's going to impact the electives, the lower level electives.
So you wouldn't sub them?
I would probably sub them, but I just,
Well, I think what she's asking, though, is could you substitute social problems for intro to sociology?
probably.
Rather than use your elective. If you had a student, because you might already be using your elective for the academic cooperative. So my question is, could you do a substitute and decide it was close enough? And that,
Yes, if they haven't already had intro to sociology. So many of the students have had both.
Both, right.
Rebecca? Nadia?
But again, only if they haven't had both.
Nita?
I use all three.
Okay.
So good.
Okay.
would be good.
Okay. You were going to say something?
I just was going to say I agree with you, and I think Melody's concern is valid, but I think part of it is having the FOS is what cleans up that messiness with social work transfers. Hopefully, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen immediately, but I think over time it will be seen less and less that they do both.
Can I ask a question of the community college representatives? How many community colleges include Sociology 1306 in their core? Is that a standard?
It's not in our.
It was taken out of our core a number of years ago, and that doesn't mean that it will stay out of the core, and this may be a reason to talk about it again, but I was just curious if that was common. So about half and half? Okay.
So does that mean then you would take, I'm sorry, I don't know the numbers. Does that mean that you would take intro to sociology out of the core and put in social problems as the
No,
core?
right now, Intro to Sociology is in the core and social problems is not. But if social problems becomes a part of the field of study, what I will start some conversation about is adding social problems back into the core, along with Intro to Sociology, so that students have the option of either taking intro or social problems, and meeting their core requirement. Social work students would choose social problems.
Okay, so it would be a or, not and.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
We want to make sure that students have several allowable choices within how they make that, how they meet that core requirement for their social behavioral sciences. And if that right now is not on your approved list of choices, if you can get it on that approved list of choices.
And that's not up to me, but it's
Right.
something I can certainly ask.
Right.
It's
And
been
it-
on there before, it just was taken out a number of years ago.
And the college, if they see that it's on the field of study, would have an impetus to get it back into the core, because otherwise it's going to cut into all the other departments' ability to offer something to that student.
Okay.
And in terms of substitutions, I can sign the substitution as department head of social work, but sociology is separate from me, so it's their decision about whether or not that subs.
Oh. Because it's a sociology
Because
course.
it's a sociology course. So there's two departments involved with making decisions about subs, and I think that can be done with my relationships that I have, but I just, the sub is not totally in my hands.
Go ahead.
So you maybe said this, but just for my brain. The requirement of 1301 versus 1306 is your requirement or the college's requirement?
Sociology 1301 intro is in our university's core.
Okay.
If 1306 is coming in and will count as part of the university's core, at this point, it requires a substitution by two departments.
Okay, so then on your BSW plan,
I can sub it on my BSW plan, but they still have to meet the core 80 requirement with
Right.
something.
Yes.
So it's not in your core either. 1306
No.
is not, I'm sorry, I can't see you.
No, it's not.
So
And I'm not opposed to it, I'm
No,
just saying
I'm
it
just- I
goes
really am just
outside of
trying to
my
understand.
department in
Yeah.
terms of saying, yeah, we'll sub. It's outside of, and Rebecca's
So
shaking her
subbing-
head that,
She's correct. We can do it on our plan.
right.
Our BSW says we want you to have 1301 and psych. But if they're going to substitute it as a core, because 1301's in the core, that's not our decision.
Sure.
okay.
Sociology department.
So you're going to look up right now, but this may not be helpful now, right, Dr. McKee? So what's being kind of searched right now?
Yeah, Rebecca's going to check and see how many institutions offer
Are we
1306.
just talking about community colleges at this point?
Well, it's changed now, I think.
Well, but so if a community college counts it as core, do we have to count it as core?
If they take
Well, they
it
come
at the
in core
community
complete.
college and
Right.
satisfies their core with it, you have to
You
apply.
have to honor.
Okay, if they come in core
If they
complete.
come in core complete, it
Even
has
if
to.
they're not core complete, course by course.
Okay.
Course by
It will be
course,
applied.
okay.
Even if they're not core complete, if they took a course under core and completed it at that institution, we have to accept it.
Okay.
So what does that
Okay.
mean
So we
to
would do
you?
that.
So I think then we would have to take it.
That would be a loophole.
Well, but
for us.
I think Intro to Sociology is much more commonly used as a core course at the junior college level than social problems.
Right.
Yes.
So they're not going to meet their, unless we can get social problems added in our core, they're not going to meet their core requirement with 1306. So they're not going to come in core complete with 1306.
So then we
So they're
do
still
need
going to have
what
to
they're
take
looking at.
1301 when they get there to meet their core there. Unless they do a substitute for core, which I think is complicated.
So that's our problem with, I think we all can agree that 1306 is really valuable subject matter.
Yes.
It's really, it's excellent subject matter for our students. The problem is whether it will be useful in terms of portability, and it's the bureaucracy, not the subject matter.
Well, so let's wait and get a number. I mean, they're looking up right now to see how many community colleges have Sociology 1306 in their core. That might help.
I don't even know if mine
How many offer it or how many have it in their core?
In their core.
in their core.
That might help the discussion if it's, only.
So she'll be able to tell how many have it in
Yeah,
their
she's
core.
looking that up.
Because I thought she was looking at how many offered it.
Rebecca, I'm sorry, I keep saying she. Rebecca's looking it up.
Because we offer it, but it's not in the core.
Right.
Right now, I'm looking at 1301.
Okay.
And I'll go and look for
06.
1301 is placed in the social behavioral science component area at 66 community colleges.
Wow, that's quite a few.
It's one or two.
66 colleges.
So I think that's all. I mean, in 66
Is that, I'm not sure.
66 is close to all, because they're including districts, they're not splitting districts
that's right.
apart.
Okay.
Like Dallas County has multiple colleges, Alamo has multiple districts. We're given, this is district.
It's good to know, right? It's easier to.
I don't remember whether it's in our core.
Around. Universities.
I'm checking.
Some universities have changed their numbers to common courses, so they're also included in that. Let me take that out. Pulled out 4 institutions, they're using the common number. 61 or so, about 60.
Use 1306?
1301.
1301. Yeah,
It'd
that's
take me a few minutes to get there.
no pressure.
Like a Code Allen, this isn't my database, so I'm giving this one.
Are you going home today?
Oh, yes.
You ready?
I'm ready to go. I'm sleeping like a
Good. You did. Did you drive in?
I'm
You did. That's a long way. I'm too old for that. I don't like that anymore. Oh, that's true.
I drove because to get here from Brownsville and have no car.
Oh.
You know, and so when I drive home, I drive right through San Antonio. My daughter lives there.
Oh. Can I see your girl?
Well, it depends on how bad 35 is.
Everyone's going to think we're the boringest faculty, right?
My house to where my daughter
There's nothing happening.
It's good.
No communication.
Yeah.
And then you have to count on 5 to 6.
Martha, yours is
Yeah, it's not core, is it?
no, it's just 1301 and econ and psych 01.
Yeah, I can tell you part of that effect is from the pathways.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
winnowing
Mm-hmm. Yes.
is pathways.
Yep.
That's what's coming your way.
We have it, but you don't.
Yeah,
So
and it, I think it used to be,
probably.
I'm sure it did.
but it's, you know, they're winnowing down to those pathways big.
Block schedules. A block schedule.
So you don't have 1301 as part of your core?
No, we have to have that conversation.
Yeah, 1301 is part of their core.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
But not 1306.
Not 1306, okay.
Not 1306.
I'll
And
bet
it-
money it's high.
Yeah, not ours either.
That's.
But then you have an option of 2301, which is
Psychology.
marriage and family.
Right.
Psychology's
Oh.
intro is.
Yeah. We do have marriage and family in our core.
For
in the core?
1306,
Yes.
far fewer community colleges offer that, and I've got 22
In their
In their core, right?
in their core for their
Third.
social and
And
behavioral.
Yeah. Okay.
And they can put that in their component area option, but usually it's already up in, it's a choice
Right.
in either place.
Okay.
But in their social, but I'm just giving you
Yeah,
social
no.
behavioral.
The component areas are usually full of something, with something else.
Yeah, that's what we are doing,
My school offers marriage and family as the other sociology in the core. And a lot of students take that. And that's not bad background for,
That's interesting to me. I think most community colleges are going to offer sociology 1301 and psychology 2301 as their core behavioral science
Yeah, we-
option.
we-
Well, along
That's what
with,
it sounds like.
And-
along with
Yeah.
economics,
Well,
yeah,
economics.
yeah, but
do we have anything else in psychology that's in that core? Or is it
No.
just that in marriage and family?
For psych, no, learning framework.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
always,
So
I
the-
haven't said anything about the sociology because I just feel we're
So
really lucky. to have
behavioral
one
sciences
one.
is just a 2301s for econ and psych, and then intro to social.
Okay, so it looks like the two options in terms of the FOS as part of the social science, social behavioral science core are 1301, Intro to Sociology, 1306, Social Problems.
But that's not in the core for most colleges.
Well, I guess if we made it part of the FOS,
It would.
colleges would,
I think
I
so.
assume, look at changing that. I don't know that, but,
or they would take it at TJC, like they would probably in the interim, they would take intro to psychology as their core, and then they would take 1306 as a part of the field of study. They would have two separate courses, which may create some duplicates for you all when they transfer.
so what direction would you guys like to go in? We
How
could
do we get
either,
them to put it into the core?
I agree.
I think, if the collective wisdom, and maybe the collective wisdom isn't the smart wisdom, but the collective wisdom is that 1306 is the better course for the student.
Right.
Then is it wrong to make the assumption that universities and colleges will adjust?
So,
I think, there is a flexibility in the university. As I'm looking at the degree plan, there are 2-3 places you can really accommodate it, but I don't know, each degree plan is different. But see, why we are doing this exercise is important, answering that question.
To get a good
If
core.
we want to go by the routine, just like in a business we are done out of it, I'm not thinking like that, because we are doing we have suggested the cooperative course for a reason, because it's going to help them, it's to prepare them. So for the same reason, I am suggesting social problems is a better option.
I agree.
If you can keep intro to psycho and intro to sociology, it may, we are offering already, but it's easy fix. But I'm not suggesting social problems just for the sake of it, because it is going to help them. Because it's application of all social sciences to human problems. If they are exposed to these human problems and the social problems, then whatever the project that you are going to do in the cooperative will be more useful, because they are exposed to that. It is tied to that. And also the other side, they are exposed to social profession. So I think it's a good mix of courses where we can really consider it a field of study.
would you like to make a motion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I move it.
Okay.
Can you say it in words for the secretary?
Okay.
Sorry.
I propose I move the motion that social problems, the SOCI 1306 social problems should be considered under one of the courses for field of study.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Can you read it out?
Yes.
Motion has been, motion to include Society 1306 social problems to the social work field of study.
Is there,
Favor?
are we ready for the vote, or is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Abstention? So, Daniel, you got the vote?
Yeah.
Okay, so I put my question forth again, which is, are we finished, or do we want to consider anything else?
Can we
Stephanie,
discuss-
you look,
Yeah,
you look like you want to say
I don't
something.
have a good poker face, I'm sorry.
Don't play cards with her.
Can we discuss the psychology class?
Okay. Go ahead.
And I'm just coming from my own space. I mean, we all come from what we know and where we're from, but from the community college perspective, because so many community colleges include intro psych, intro soc, and human growth and development, which is another one that we haven't looked at in terms of the core. I'd just like to have the conversation of including a psychology course in the field of study that will meet a core requirement for most community colleges. Do most universities require a psychology course?
Yes, according to this, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
We do not.
Yes, we have that, yes.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's one with 7.
So it's posing a challenge for you and potentially others, but here we're, okay. I don't want to set students up to lose credit hours either.
Well, if what I'm understanding is correct, they would not lose these hours.
Right.
We would be challenged to put it someplace. I don't know where that will be, to be honest, but we would be challenged to do that.
And I don't know what my options are for having the conversation of adding social problems back into our core, but there are a lot of community colleges that don't include it in their core, so this is going to be kind of a larger scale conversation that's going to have to be
Yes.
had.
Yeah, way beyond our department or our program reach. Yeah, I'm director of the social work program, but that doesn't give me reach into what's called core.
Right.
But you have curriculum committees that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
They're
proposals
supportive.
come from the chairs.
My only other comment about it would be, the more we prescribe, the less choice the students have. And I think we've prescribed quite a bit, which I think is wonderful. I don't have any problem with anything we've done, and it will present, maybe I'm just coming from my space, which is, I don't know where we will put it. I will tell you at this point, to be honest, it will be one of those classes that I'll have to decide some upper level class that it will have to substitute for if they don't have room for an elective. Because we're already going to do the cooperative project perhaps as an elective.
Here's the thing, to me, that I like the idea of having the students have both. I can still have that on my Associate of Arts in Social Work. And have them leave me having had it because most of the universities want it. And also have them leave me core complete and field of study complete. When we do the field of study, we haven't described the entirety of our Associate of Arts in Social Work. So if we feel like Introduction to Psychology is something that most of the receiving institutions for our students have, we can have that on the Associate of Arts without making it in the field of study that it has to be there. mean, I don't know.
If the purpose of the field of study is to best prepare students for workforce, university transfer, competencies in their discipline, whatever I've heard a number of things. 5 courses. Of the field of studies that I'm familiar with,
They have a lot more.
there are more. So am I correct in that the average number of, what is the average number of credit hours for fields of study?
It's hard to say. I'd say the average is 18, but again, don't get hung up on that, because in that 18,
Is that 36?
as many as 3 courses may double count towards the course. So really, the unique part of the field of study may only be 2 or maybe 3 courses. But the field of study, you're doing the right thing, which is to help students who are in this field do the selecting for them of what they need to take for their various core component options.
I know the more options.
That's appropriate for the field of study.
The more options the students have for self-advising, the more options they have,
Or mistakes.
the more varied their coursework will be coming into the university setting. So,
But if you already have intro to psychology as part of your core, then we're going to accept it anyway, because we accept, and Rebecca helped define that even more, that we have to put it someplace in the, it's a class for class in the core.
okay,
So if it's part of your core, we're going to take it one way or the other.
We have no problem because we need that psychology course.
The universities I work with all require it. I have 3 institutions.
You want it, right?
Yeah, we also have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're the outlier.
Outlier.
We're the outlier
It's a
here,
great
but,
really whether it's in the field of study for you, whether it's in the field of study or not, if our students are taking Psych 2301 as their core behavioral science along with these 5 classes, it's going to be the same situation either way.
Right, because that's what Rebecca now has told me I have to do. And I'm good with that.
And it's a core. It's not like we're adding in some bizarre
Right.
something.
Yeah.
It is
So then if it's
core.
a foundational course, and most universities really they value it as a part of the competencies for social work education, should it be a part of the field of study? Because that's making a statement that it is
I agree.
something that's important as a part of this educational process.
Well, I guess from my space, we would argue, and this was the argument this was not my decision. I didn't make this decision. But the argument was that decision is based on tradition. Back when we had to prove that we had, social science perspective as the base, and that if you look at the modern textbooks from social work, what they're getting in Intro to Psychology is included in most of the content that they're getting throughout the social work courses, especially in the 2 HBSE classes. And that is why we decided to not require it, so that we could make room, because we can't go over the hours, so that we could make room for them to take real social work courses. When I say real social work courses, I mean, social work courses like I said yesterday, aging in American society, because we felt that better prepared them for going out and doing social work than Intro to Psychology did, when we felt like that base was in other courses, that content was there.
They don't need Intro to Psychology. That doesn't necessarily improve their success in HBSC classes.
No.
Because it's a duplicate, is what you're saying.
The content is very preliminary. It introduces what psychology is. But what we need as social workers is the behavioral foundation and how to understand human behavior, the causes, all those, the theoretical base. And that's what social workers need, because it just introduces psychology as a field. So that's not enough. I think, we are looking at more social workers, competency-based education.
Right.
And we don't have a lot of room there to teach different things, but we want to teach them what is the foundation, what is the theory behind, what is the problem, how you analyze and how you understand it, and what kind of policy inputs you can bring in, and how do you address it, or what are the approaches do you use to address it. So we don't have a lot of space there. So we want to prepare the focus on this and building those competencies with a number of exposures and practicum and all that. I think we have gone far away from that. Now since we are focusing so much on competency-based education, I think we need to make some adjustments and changes from the past, because the very intro courses are not providing that material which we are looking for.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that we're no longer where we started, which was teaching students to become therapists eventually.
Right.
That's not where social work is right now. And so we felt that it would be better for them to have social work content instead, social work intervention content. And the person who did the content analysis is a very well-known researcher in qualitative research. So I trust if she tells me that the content is there, that it's there. I mean, it wasn't like she just, looked over books. She actually did a thorough content analysis. So, but that is not trying to push that off on anyone else. I'm just really responding, Stephanie, to your really good points about what really is the importance now of intro to psychology. That's just from our perspective. That is not the traditional nor the most common perspective in social work. That's just how we came to our conclusion.
I would much rather see TJC students take intro to psych as their core than geography or economics. So I'm just trying to enhance what they're going to take anyways with a choice that makes more sense for them and for us.
But again, if it's part of your core, we're going to figure out, we're going to take it.
Yeah.
Right, Stephanie? That's right? I mean, Rebecca, right?
Yes.
You're Rebecca, that's correct, right? Yes.
I think what Stephanie's saying, though, is she wants to make sure her students take that.
Right, right.
So even if it's part of the core, then we take it, we put it where it works. But she doesn't want to give her students the choice to take geology.
Well,
or
and
something
I
instead.
really like the idea of students for students to have choices, because I know at the community college level they're changing their majors, and if they take mass communication, which is another option for their behavioral science at TJC in the core, then for them to use it is beneficial to them financially, time-wise. I mean, I like them having options, and I don't like them losing anything. But I think psychology makes more sense.
It does.
Some kind of, trying to weigh the.
And that self-advising, again, I'm thinking they might, there's all kinds of little places where they might go for component areas or, for the different, there's.
I mean, I'm going to ask that social problems be put back in our core. I don't know if it'll work, but there are lots of other colleges that are in the same position that we are. So,
As far as psych goes?
No.
That don't include social problems in their core.
Oh, okay.
So, would be looking for the student to take another core behavioral science in order to complete their core at TJC or at the community college level.
Got it.
There aren't very many
And
that.
I'd like it to stay in, I'd like for that other, for those two different, they have two components in social behavioral science. I'd like the other one to be not economics or.
And we don't have, this could come down to an advising issue at our campus, which is fine. I see all the social work majors. I have the advisors send them to me, and I meet with them individually. So we can take care of it there. But if they come in to my office because they've changed their major and have already taken mass communications or geography or economics, that'll go into the behavioral science space rather than psychology or sociology.
So then you would, if we made it part of the FOS, then they would have to take even if they've already fulfilled that requirement, they would have to take
And that's a disadvantage to them. That would be a disadvantage to them. So that's that's kind of challenging my.
But the goal of the FOS is to clean that up, right? Is to create clarity for students who have only ever had two options that look different on every single campus. To create some consistency, I think would fix some of that. It's not going to be perfect. I mean, students wander all over the map no matter what.
Well, I don't know how it would fix it if they started off someplace else, though, which a lot of.
Oh, you mean changing majors?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of students, in the old days, remember, that was part of college. You went in, you tried to figure out, no, I don't really like this.
You're exploring.
Yes, that is part of human behavior, right, is to explore. So I don't know, I think that will always continue to be a problem. It's almost 11, so I want to ask you if you want to make a motion, Stephanie, about that, or what you would like to do at this point.
Do we have anything else we need to talk about?
Ellen, do we have anything else?
Well, what's left in the core? Language. You could put Spanish in. It's hard to imagine a social worker in Texas not having some
universities are moving away from that.
Yeah, we moved away from language.
You've got
Lots of them have.
humanities. You've got creative arts. Apart from that, that's the only areas that I could
We've got the
think of.
science to play with.
So we don't need to specify any of the other core in terms of science or humanities.
Well, we could if we want to.
If you thought that the relevance to the discipline was more
Biological
priority
science
students
rather
having
than
their own free
geology.
choice.
Right.
To me, that's kind of a university call. But it is good to know that what's happening now in terms of students taking core classes and then having to take another core class because that wasn't the core class they were supposed to take. It's good to know that this is going to that's not really where we need to be.
If you don't need to specify a core course, don't, because that
Right.
restricts student choice. Plus, you're right, if a student doesn't know they want to do social work
Right.
until their second or third semester, then they may have already taken their core options in those categories, and then they'd have to take another course again, and would possibly be some duplication of effort and time there on their part.
Can I ask a procedural question for the four-year institutions? How many of you actually physically see the transfer transcripts? They come to you?
We can pull them up in the system, yeah.
You put them in the system?
We can pull them.
You can pull them?
Yeah, I think your point's a good one because the university's already made their decision before they get to us, and we just look at the social work classes.
Well, and sometimes they don't. I keep reading the code, and the code says certain things will occur. I think, as I read it, it was based on two assumptions. One being that students would only be taking probably no more than 2 courses at the lower level. But then again, that the rest of us had room to force these courses into our respective curriculum. But for example, I don't see a student's transcript. All I see is what someone else has entered into the system. Now, I can request that the student bring an unofficial copy, okay? But I'm just wondering how that plays out across the state. And because the notation for field of study is supposed to be on there, and the notation for core courses are supposed to be on there, which helps alleviate some of the concerns about how many courses are being very prescriptive as far as the core. Is it that field of study will be notated for each course, or that field of study will be notated once the field of study is complete?
Each course.
Okay.
Students can still transfer. I mean, if they haven't completed the field of study, you still have to accept the courses that they did complete.
There we go. Okay. So that's going to be an education piece on the other end of all of this.
Just to follow that up, one argument we keep having is Tarleton accepts, I think it's practice one. You guys accept
We
practice
have a
one?
practice one, but we don't accept your practice one. Or yeah.
No, but I mean from community colleges.
No, we don't.
Okay, there's something that you accept that we don't accept. So we've been arguing with our administration about if Tarleton can accept it, why can't we accept it?
Yeah, and I'm not sure which one that
I
is.
thought it was practice. Okay, maybe it's not.
We don't-
Maybe it's HBSC. Y'all accept HBSC? Yeah, that's probably what it is then. But that decision is made by people in the registrar's office. It's not made by us. And we haven't been able to get them to change it. So,
Are we losing something if we have 18 hours to put into Field OS, FOS? Are we losing something by not fulfilling the full 18? You know, like, is it a deficit if we have 18 to use it, we should use all 18? Feel like
In
we
the
should
time
use it.
that's left, and it's going to vary from student to student, depending on how early they start their core and how wise they make their selections and what the institutions offer. But if a student can either transfer early before they complete 60 hours, or they can fill up the courses with electives for social work that are determined by the college, recommended electives for social work, and there's specific courses. Or they can take free electives. I mean, however each individual college structures your associate of arts degree social work, they can complete those requirements or complete those options. There are a lot of good electives that I've seen in degree plans, that are offered by the colleges. So that's what they would fill in.
Mine, for example, have as elective choices. They have the marriage and family class that's considered core. We also offer the lifespan class. And we offer the social problems class, which is not core. But they have some elective choices that support the development of the kind of thinking that they're going to need to have. And so we recommend the human biology. That it has the human component, not geology. So we have a lot. When you read our degree plan, it prescribes we try to prescribe a very strong base for the student going to the university. But if for some reason you've got somebody who's doing that major change or whatever, if we leave ourselves room to be able to make a substitution, we don't want to substitute the entire degree so that they are, somebody who was an art major who suddenly now,
right.
My understanding is now that, and it hasn't always been this way, so correct me if I'm wrong, the core classes transfer either in block or individually. And the field of study courses transfer either in block or individually. But any elective credit that's left open that they would need to take to complete their 60 hours for a degree could be lost. Because there's no mandate for associate degree courses to transfer. So.
That's right. The credit, yes.
So.
The credit hours will transfer, but they might not apply to a degree program.
So they'll end up graduating with possibly 130 hours instead of 120.
That's what happens now.
Yeah, so I'd like to minimize that as much as possible. Just in the interest, I'd like for the students to graduate with an associate degree. But I want it to be worth their time and their effort and their money if they're planning to transfer. Right, because most of my social work majors are planning to transfer. Yeah. So, I can't ethically convince them to take a bunch of courses to complete 60 hours to get their associate degree if I know that they're going to lose them or their extra hours and they're planning to transfer. Does that make sense?
Yes. So your transfer students are well advised to, someone said it before, Deborah, that if they need to be looking at what's required or offered at the institution that they're planning on transferring
Right,
to.
yes.
And if they have a choice of designated electives, they would be well advised to
Yes.
take a look and see what it is that UT Arlington has and offers in credits towards the degree program. And if they have a choice, that should be the course they take.
Absolutely.
So a lot of what your worry, and it's a worry that we all share here at the coordinating board, comes down to good advising.
I don't know.
To have advice on what options to fill those extra
And
hours.
I think there's possibly a misconception among some people, and I haven't asked, but just based on what I've heard, that the field of study eliminates, the need for as much, that it's a block of 60 hours, and that's not necessarily true. And I'm becoming
Right.
better educated and understand that much better now, but it's too bad that everybody can't be a part of this type of conversation.
It could. I mean, in an ideal world where everybody was a robot, I mean, we could have a perfect block of 60 hours
Right.
where every choice was determined. Students began it exactly on time, finished it exactly on time, and that every four-year institution offered those same courses or the equivalents at the lower division, and it would all work in perfect lockstep. And perhaps over time, it will converge that way. The courses that are not in the field of study at the lower division that are offered at community colleges, over time may gradually wither away as enrollments get steered towards the courses that are in field of study. And of course, it's a cart and the horse situation where the number of courses that are offered at the community college are going to be more if they're in the field of study. And so those will be the courses that students have available to take. The other courses will have lower enrollments and will gradually disappear. And it might be the case that especially for small colleges, it might be the case that the only courses they can offer is social work with their one faculty and one adjunct. Might be only the field of study courses. And that wouldn't be the case.
I just want to add here, I think your fear that they may be exceeding 120 hours when they graduate. I have seen a lot of requests as a department chair. We have done everything possible to see that the students graduate with the 120 credit hours. And our advice very sincerely put together some proposals where in a routine way that course is not a substitution, and put forward a proposal, and the student has already met the requirement, meeting the requirement of our major courses, and this is an additional course, then why do we need to ask the student to do additional hours? And we have substituted it. Even it is out of routine, we have done that very consciously. I think, we, at the university also, of course, it's natural that it could happen, but just I'm looking at my past experience, 3 or 4 years, which have been reviewing these requests, we have done in every possible case, we have given substitution, even though it is out of routine. So I'm thinking, I think on those lines, it's not quite frequent that it is happening, where the students are putting in more hours than required. So I just want to add that, it's not.
Okay. Do we have any other motions or courses that we want to
Was
consider?
a vote taken on the psychology?
No, there was no motion.
Okay.
No motion was ever made about that.
Okay.
Lisa?
I guess what I'm wondering is, and I mean, it's very hard to read body language because we don't know each other well, so I may be making assumptions. But is it possible, since you said at the beginning, this is not like a one-shot deal, right? That we can revisit this?
Well, what will happen, I'll just jump ahead of the agenda here. What happens next after this is this gets posted for 30 days for public comment. I'll write up a formal version of the field of study with a little accompanying memo explaining what we're trying to do and what the rules are. The memo will go out to all CAOs and CIOs at public universities and public colleges. asking for public comment. Plus, a copy will go to your liaison. All the colleges and universities have a designated liaison. It's their job, hopefully, to get this distributed to the university, the people who need to see it. So hopefully all of your faculty members, all of your colleagues will get forwarded this message from the coordinating board. Some institutions like to have, if they've got a regularly scheduled faculty meeting, they may bring this up at their faculty meeting and send us one response from the institution. You know, we here at University of Texas at Austin feel that X, Y, and Z. Or individual faculty members may decide to write in, or members of the public may decide to write in. What happens is when I get all of those after the deadline's up, I'll get all of the public comments. I'll copy them into a single document. I'll strip away some of the salutation and some of the fluff and just get the meat and bones of the comment. I'll put them in a single document, which I will send to all of you. If there's a way I can make sense of it, I'll try to isolate it and summarize what the main points are and count them up, like how many people complained about the academic cooperative, how many universities, how many colleges, how many people complained about where's my intro to psychology class, how many people complained about that, so that you can see how often how an issue occurs. Depending upon the number and the nature of the public comments, it will be up to this committee probably. It's really Rex's determination what to do, if we want to call you all back into Austin to have another meeting to discuss it, or to leave it up to you, the committee, to decide whether or not you want to come back in person to discuss it. The alternative would be to discuss it via email threads with a ballot of some sort, where I would say, do you agree, yes or no? Do we incorporate this suggestion, yes or no? And then we may have to have another discussion either on email or a conference call or something like that to say how exactly we're going to solve this problem. The issue that we run into is public meeting laws. If we pass a motion, if we do official business, it needs to be a public meeting and it needs to be advertised in the Texas Register. So sometimes there's kind of a fine line of how much business we can really do, which is a reason why our last agenda item is I would like for one of you to entertain a motion to authorize your two co-chairs to approve a final document, because that's a way of saying, rather than all of us taking a vote, which has to be a public meeting, if you could convey your sense of what you want done to our two co-chairs and then designate them the authority to make that decision, then that avoids us having to have a full public meeting and coming back to Austin and doing a webcast of the whole thing. But if Rex determines that it is too much and doesn't quite cross that, we don't want to cross the threshold of going against the spirit of that law. So we may determine that we need to call you back in, or at least advertise a public meeting and a conference call, which is weird, because then we say, well, if you want to, the public wants to participate, they can come to the coordinating board and sit next to me by the telephone, and they can hear the call. But that's the way it is. So that's what will happen with the public comments. You may very well get some public comments. This is not a little thing. It's not just a little, a little footnote to the process. There might be some substantive public comments, and we need to address. We have a responsibility to address each one of the public comments, either yes or no. But we have to acknowledge that we read it and heard it and understood. I can imagine typically what happens in public comments is universities will write back and say, we don't offer this course, and we don't know where we're going to put it. And by doing this, you're taking away an upper division level elective, and those are important to our program and important to the character of our program, and we can't afford to cut that course out. Whenever you add a new course to the ACGM, that always stirs up the dust a little bit. Colleges may write back and say, we do not have the faculty to teach this academic cooperative. You can kind of probably expect that comment. Who's going to teach this? What are the credentials necessary? You might have somebody respond and say something about accreditation or licensure requirements and how the field of study may help or hurt their licensure or accreditation issues. These are the kinds of things that come up. So you think, be thinking about that in advance. But on the other hand, I don't know, everybody might write back and say, great, this is a huge improvement. This is a big, this is, social work has been kind of stagnant. You know, the ACGM isn't really reflective of what it is we do. This is a big improvement. Students are going to really benefit from this. So look at some of those comments too, hopefully. So that's
Can
what
I
happens.
amend my question?
Yes.
I guess what I meant was, is it possible that we could stop where we are and say that's a lot of change?
Yep.
And let's let it ride and see how it works and then revisit it in a year or two?
Yes, you could. This committee can reconvene at any time. If that's one responsibility of the co-chairs to stay in touch with the committee and your colleagues, and all of you stay in touch with your colleagues. And if there is a sense that this needs to be revisited, then I can bring that up with Rex and others, and we can see if this committee needs to come back. But there's no reason why we couldn't. We plan to revisit it in 5 years, but if it's necessary to do it before that, we certainly can. 1 year would be kind of
I'm not.
soon.
I just
But
picked a number.
In 3 years, 2 or 3 years, if the sense that this is either really not working or there's some serious problems, or if there are big changes that institutions are making in their core, or if Texas does something strange with the core, then certainly that's why you have 1, 2, and 3 year terms. This committee can revisit this.
We have some unfinished business. Yesterday, we said we were including social work 2361 and 2362, and we made the motion to do that, but we agreed that it needed description changes. And you said there was going to be an SLO committee this summer, but the course descriptions as they stand don't satisfy anyone on the committee. So will that be part of what happens this summer?
I'll be happy to speak to that if I can get my.
It's like bottom button. Bottom button, just press it once slightly. Press it too hard, it doesn't work. Tap it right.
I've got it now. Okay. We had already talked about this because social work was one of the last disciplines in the ACGM not to be reviewed for learning outcomes. And our process for that is that we'll engage a group similar to this, and there could be some overlap. Some of you may want to be involved with that process. It's usually a smaller group, and it's a work group. We do a lot of prep ahead of time by collecting syllabi. We look at syllabi from universities and community colleges offering the program or offering the courses. The intent is for whatever we do in rebuilding a course to make sure it's fitting the needs of the universities, that it is going to work for universities. So that's an important component and to look across the state. Just because you have a wonderful course doesn't mean that it's going to fit the needs across the state. So even bringing experts, they have their own mindset. Part of our process is to get them to look at everything else. Look at what other universities are doing. And so we'll collect the syllabi from all the institutions that are offering this degree program. And when we collect them, then it's their responsibility to review them, to start thinking in categories of what are the essentials and what are the topics. So then when we do come together, they've done all this homework and they're prepared to, okay, we'll talk about the topics first, and that builds the description. And then the learning outcomes are what you want the student to go away with. And we can usually get this ironed out in a full day meeting, or occasionally it will take 2 days. But the point I want to emphasize is that the homework needs to be done first. You cannot just do this off the cuff.
No.
You need to see what's happening, and community colleges need to see what universities are expecting, and vice versa. What are they teaching now? And there's a lot of times good ideas at the community college that, oh, we can implement that or put that into the course in a way. So that's that process. And it will be a call for nominations for the learning outcomes. And
so the learning outcomes workshop will also address those descriptions.
it will. We usually do, yes, because we want to see what's in those courses at the universities and community colleges now.
There is a consensus. I mean, all of us have to use, all of the community colleges have to use the ACGM description.
Well,
so we
this
can add
group,
to it.
This group would be reviewing to change that.
Yeah,
to make it, update that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the common wisdom of this group was, hey, those descriptions,
they're old. They're old.
Well, you've got the time. If you wanted to give that committee, Rex said yesterday, if you came up with some text, we can give it to that committee as a place to start and for that committee to consider.
Or if you prefer just to let us kind of go forward after we've reviewed syllabi.
I think the syllabus.
I think that provides an
I think
evidence-based
reviewing
perspective versus.
I would hate in half an hour to on the fly try to say, hey, we think it should.
8 minutes.
I just don't know that you should have like introduction in both of them, for example. They both seem to be introducing.
And I think it would be good to have some overlap between this committee. Some of you have been here and heard this conversation, and so I would recommend when those call for nominations go out, if you're interested and would like to participate in that, please submit your name for that. It's a smaller group, usually about 12, but it's equal community colleges and universities.
Thank you.
If any of you individually have some recommendations for that text, just email me privately and I'll keep a list. And when the time comes for the field of study, for the Learning Objectives Committee, I'll make sure that Rebecca gives that summary document to the committee and give them food for thought what this committee wanted to see in those course descriptions. What's the nature of those changes?
Well, if you look at the descriptions, there's not, they're extremely short, which we all agree that sometimes less is more, so that's okay. I don't know what I did with my social work, it's only 1 page.
The trend has been to really lengthen those and be more specific in those. The disciplines have found that that's what they want to do.
One of the things that we noted was that the second description begins with an introduction of, and it's the secondary course. It is not, it's the course Introduction to Social Work is the one that should be the introduction. So that was a little confusing in there. The first one introduces, for all of us, we introduce ethics in the first course. We introduce history in the first course. In the second course, we study the social welfare in America, how the policies and how the larger society and social policies and political, economic outlook, how those things then end up influencing what ends up being your service delivery, because it very much influences your service delivery choices because it influences programming. And so first one is, what do social workers do? How do we think? What's our philosophy? What's our ethics? A little bit of the history. And then this one's a different perspective. And you don't really get the difference of these two in here.
Just to add to what Martha has said is, the first 2361 is about social work profession as such. So introducing social work profession to the students. And the second one is social welfare system in the US. So what are the different institutions that are providing various social services. And what is the policy out there, what kind of role social workers are playing, and what kind of skills they use in those settings. So this is a kind of overview of the fields, different settings where social workers practice, and which includes the policy aspects as well. But the other first one is overview of social work, and in that we cover philosophy of social work and ethics, and historical trends. And also the students will get exposure to what social workers are actually doing. So
A lot of exposure to the different kinds of fields and settings and places where we might be. And
They both just need to be revised.
yeah, the code of
both need to
ethics is big. I mean, the first one you can't, I don't know that you can teach the first one without at least the idea that social workers have an ethical code, but the word ethics isn't even used in the description.
Okay, it's gonna be a lot of work, that's good. Yeah.
Did you want your motion? The motion that you would ask for to authorize the co-chairs
Yeah.
to approve the minutes and the final field of study documents, provided there's no need for a face-to-face meeting.
I second the motion.
Before we forget.
Motion's been presented to allow co-chairs to authorize the final, what was the word?
To approve the minutes
To approve
and
the
the
minutes.
final field of study documents.
So the final field of study documents. All, yes.
Do we have any discussion?
All for? All against?
Let me ask a quick
You will
question
hurt my feelings.
to the four-year institutions here. Are there any other disciplines, any other majors, any other degree programs for which this field of study could also serve as their field of study?
Love to see sociology.
Sociology, they've got their own committee,
I'm
they'll be
sure,
meeting soon.
yeah.
What are you
I'm gonna show
thinking,
them
like-
this, that may be interested to see how it works.
I wish more of those disciplines would require introduction to social work, for example, just to
Absolutely.
give students that broader perspective. But the
I
practice
think-
piece, the applied.
Yeah, because they don't have the language. They think, often students think that they're in a direct helping field. They don't
Well,
understand
I've
the
seen an
difference.
increase in applied sociology, which is,
Social work.
no, they're social work.
I
They're
think,
not going to be licensed with applied sociology.
I think criminal justice to an extent, it could relate to some of the things, because I have worked very closely with colleagues in the criminal justice department, and there's a number of courses that they have taught, and reviewed some of those things. I think, some of the courses we do have some overlap. But in one particular setting, correctional settings, if we have a social worker is doing most of the things. And if now, since we have a criminal justice degree and they are doing the same things, sometimes the practice roles are similar too, but the philosophy is a little bit different. It's a more controlled environment than the other settings that we have. Though there are differences, I do agree that the two disciplines are separate, but some of those things, which we are talking about can apply to criminal justice, what I can
The
recall.
criminal
Yeah.
justice field of study is out for public comment right now. And the courses, they picked out 5 courses. There's no change from the existing field of study for criminal justice. They picked an introduction to criminal justice, court systems and practices, fundamentals of criminal law, correctional systems and practices, and police systems and practices. Those are all CRIJ courses. So they stay strictly within their discipline. But I agree with you, there's all kinds of things that criminal justice could have done and may do in the future to get far in line. And they talked about some of those courses, but it's not sticking from the head.
I feel like we need to put psychology either to bed or right to work. I mean, for me, I don't think the conversation was closed. It was sort of left hanging, maybe. Can we I just want to suggest that I take this real serious, and you all are a bunch of weirdos too, and you're like not kidding around, right? Maybe we could just agree that can we set it aside and come back to it, say, even if it's just for a conversation in 3 years with each other to say, how's it working? Has it caused any problems that it isn't there? Is there some opportunity based on changes that we need to be looking at? I mean, I don't know. I just don't want to leave it hanging because I feel like it was brought up, we discussed it, and then we sort of got diverted. And I'm trying to read body language again. I don't feel like it's something that folks are ready to say, yes, it needs to be in there. But I also think it's something that long-term we might want to revisit and just have a conversation about. Again, I'm not a mind reader, so does that make sense? Or are you ready to?
Will that be part of the process though anyway, in 3
Well,
years?
5 years is the standard. I'm just thinking 3 is I mean, I think 3 years is long enough for us to at least come back and have a conversation with each other to say, yeah, that still makes sense.
Well, in 3 years, 1/3 of you will still be on the committee. 2/3 of you will have rotated off. So there'll be so it won't be everybody in 3 years.
Okay.
And just a conversation isn't enough for us to do a whole call to get new committee members. So if you want to talk with everybody in this room, it needs to be, within a year from today. If you want to talk to 2/3 of us in 2 years, 1/3 of us, 3 years.
Well, what do y'all think needs to happen?
After that, it's just the 2 of you until we get to 5 years.
My concern about meeting again in 2 or 3 years and changing the plan is that we've got students who've already started under a plan and haven't necessarily, well, maybe they've had time to finish it by then. That's probably where the 2 to 3 year
That's the idea behind 5
comes
years.
from.
So let a whole,
Yeah.
at least a whole cohort go through
Yeah.
the 4-year degree program plus 1 year to collect the data.
The more frequently you change it from an advising standpoint, because I worked as an academic advisor for a period of time. And in the interest of the students and their frustration level and complicating things, changing a plan. I did have one question. I may be the one that you keep looking at it. I'm bouncing back and forth. I have another question for the universities and about the psychology. Because the large majority of universities require the intro to psychology, if I have a student who comes in, because I want to give the student options too. I don't want to be real prescriptive with every single thing that they end up trapped with a bunch of courses that aren't working for them. If they come to a university that requires intro to psychology as a social work degree requirement, and they've taken geography or
Anthropology.
human growth and development, one of the other core behavioral science courses, obviously the core behavioral science course will count in the core. Would they then be required to take intro to psychology because it's a part of the degree plan?
No, because it's not in the FOS.
Currently, yes.
Right.
For us, currently, yes.
Because it's upper division?
No, currently, yes,
Currently
but with the
it's-
FOS,
but with
they
the
will not.
FOS, no, we wouldn't make them take it.
Because it's a
I
lower
will,
division.
I want to see what your content analysis person gathered, because I've been entertaining taking some of that out of our requirements.
Because what I wouldn't want to happen is that student who took human growth and development as their core at TJC, and then they get to the university, the ones who took that course now have to take intro.
No.
But the ones who did take intro don't have to take intro, so some are taking an extra course and others are not.
Or the ones who took marriage and family with me.
Right,
Which isn't even
to meet the core
psychology.
requirement there.
They took marriage
They
and
would
family.
not have to take intro to psychology under a field of study when they get to their university if they've met the core in another way,
Unless-
and it's not in the field of study.
Unless we make it part of the field of study, then they will have to take it.
Then they will have to.
See, that content analysis thing I don't feel strongly either way. I'm being really honest right now. I'm not trying to cause us to get stuck or to move forward. But it's your piqued interest too. I'm interested. And what if that were something that lots of colleges, if we're not meeting to have those discussions about what are we learning, then our curriculum is going to stay stuck and it won't move forward. It just seems like an opportunity to me.
And also the reality is that some students won't complete the whole field of study. They'll transfer with 3/4 of it. There are some students who will go to small colleges that don't offer every course. The law doesn't say every college must offer all of the courses that are in the field of study. You know, the colleges are doing the best they can. And if a student is going to a college that doesn't offer social problems, then, okay, they just don't, or if they took courses in the wrong order or made bad decisions or got bad advice,
That's a good
and they
reminder.
don't take it, then it's all right. They could still transfer the field of study courses they did take, and they'll complete the requirements at the university to which they are transferring. And that's okay.
Since it seems like there's information out there that would be helpful in making this decision, is it does the field of study, the results of this meeting go out for public comment immediately after this meeting ends, or would it be reasonable?
Yeah, a week or two, yeah.
Well, if we reconvene, I don't know how this is going to.
Just say it.
I mean, I feel like we need to meet again to look at some of the data that's going to support the decision we make on this. Or do we need? Are there other people who have an opinion one way or the other about whether or not psychology should be in the?
I haven't heard from anyone really, except for just.
I doesn't. It could go in and it could stay out. I mean, I don't really have a.
I guess I'm just not as worried about it as you are, and I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Because if they come with that class, we're going to find a place for it. So I don't feel like the student will waste it. So if they come with everything on the FOS or they come with partial, we'll find a place for it. That's what we're agreeing to. So I guess I'm not that worried about it.
I want to know what to tell students. I want to be able to speak with confidence to them that I'm giving them good, solid advising.
Tell them to take all of the classes on the FOS and the core, and so that they can be ready to move on to junior, senior. Because
But to graduate, they're going to take one more.
Because we are all agreeing that we will accept whatever's in the core and whatever's on the FOS. Regardless of whether our plan is totally different, and Nita found out that with COSWE, that doesn't matter as long as we have the same outcomes.
Okay.
So that's, I think, the advice that we give to students when they come.
Then it seems like that's an argument to put it in, because if it's not going to affect negatively the universities, but it will create real clarity because it defines the 18 hours for the community college student, then it'll create a lot more consistency.
Well, I'll say this, if my students take another course as their core behavioral science and the field of study, they complete their core, they complete their field of study, then they come to you. Of course, this doesn't matter to you, but they come to Texas Women's University, they will not have taken intro to psych, nor will they take it at all for their bachelor's degree. They will not have intro to psychology. They will not have a psychology
Say that again.
class.
They come in and what?
If my students come in core complete and field of study complete, and that did not include a psychology course, they will not take a psychology course to graduate with their bachelor's degree.
Correct, because we have to.
Right. So if that's okay,
I mean, we have to.
or is that something you're saying, well, that's just what we have to do, or do you want them to have it?
I mean, it's.
I'm sorry, I think the argument is that they're going to get it in their other social work courses, is what y'all found.
That's what we found.
Okay.
So you're not worried about it?
At one institution or all?
Well, no, we haven't shared our opinion with anybody.
Well, but
so.
I guess it is all, because everybody
I haven't
does
brought it
his.
back to
That's
it.
right.
I didn't ask.
That's right.
And I think it's important to remember, though, that this goes far beyond just us agreeing. This is our requirement. This is our mandate.
Right.
So we're going to
What we're
find a
saying.
way to accommodate the student that comes to us while still doing what we have to do to make sure that at the time they graduate, we're able to make sure we've assessed all of the competencies and done what we need to do. So it's not.
But my vote would be based on kind of what's best in terms of helping y'all with that process.
I tend to lean toward their area, and I'm looking now at everything we have in our two-course sequence, human behavior. We could probably do without the psychology 131.
Okay.
Yeah, Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
By the time they get to the graduation of the four-year degree, what we're looking at is that well-rounded student. That's why we give them those options in language and communication and then the sciences, you know. I also don't think that we should be so prescriptive of like, you must have these. That's why we need to be very selective on the courses that we do select. These are going to be the courses that are going to make you able to really flourish in social work. But at the end of the 4 years, it's going to be a well-rounded student that knows more about other disciplines than just social work.
Melody, go ahead.
Well, I think somebody said it yesterday about sociology and psychology being kind of legacy courses along with the biology. And so I started in this a long time ago and have seen the progression, and I'm ready to revisit some of those classes that are in there because our program came about in 1980, and it's like we weren't holding our own yet, I don't think, in 1980. Bachelor's programs were newly accredited during that time period. And so a lot of these things have been, it's kind of like, why do you cut the roast off? Because my mom always did.
Right.
It's like, why do we have these courses?
Right.
Because we always have. And so I've already been having the conversations about which ones of these do we already do? Why are we relying on psychology and sociology to provide foundations for our students when we are a profession in our own right with our own field of knowledge and our own stuff? So I'm really not in favor of prescribing it because we're personally going to probably move away from that. But that's where I'm at right now.
And from an advising standpoint, I'll say again, what I do is if my students have an idea of where they think they might go, and most of them are going to go to the ones that are close enough, although some go far afield. But if they have an idea of what institution they think they might go, I use every extra course that's not already prescribed on my AA with the social work emphasis. Let's use the rest of those courses to match where you're going. And most of mine, if they have an interest, they're going to be interested in Texas A&M Kingsville, Our Lady of the Lake, and UT RGV. And so we have a list that mirrors those accepting institutions so that when they leave us, they've taken as much as possible of those classes. It's just smart advice, because you're like me. You want to advise them well. It's not just we do want to teach them well, of course. But
Well, what I hear just from this group, and I know we'll get some feedback after this, but is that we can leave that core open, and if the student is choosing one and they really don't care which one they take, we can recommend psychology. But if they take another one, it's okay too, and that'll be kind of our approach.
Well, Rebecca said they have anthropology.
We do.
We don't even offer it.
Yeah.
And social problems is core for 22. I think it's 22.
Right.
So they would
Then
have
those-
core 80 with that.
Right, and they would be
Behavioral
taking an
sciences.
extra course if it were added to the FOS.
So if we're going to set it aside, which it seems like, right? That's kind
Yes.
of where we are. Could we then agree I don't think THECB has to be involved for us as a faculty to come together and say, hey, let's have a robust conversation about what you guys have learned. I mean, I don't have a horse in this race. I'm not a BSW program, but I surely am a social worker, and I would love to see us aggressively pursue what could that mean. Maybe Texas could lead the way in doing some of the work that you're talking about, right? Which is to reevaluate. I'm not trying to sign you up for anything, but I think it's really good.
We've already done it.
Even one of the things is even biology courses. I think we need to reevaluate what content that the students are coming with.
Right.
Especially in the light of the advances that happen in a neuroscience. In a child abuse area,
Yes.
neuroscience is being applied. Mental health, neuroscience is being applied. So there are better ways to analyze the problems, understand the problems. We used biology when we did not know neuroscience.
Right.
But now neuroscience is providing better understanding, deeper understanding. So we need to think about how we can add new courses so that our students are better prepared and understand relate to the issues better. I think that's the direction we need to go based on the advances in sciences. And
but those programs have their own limitations. They say we don't have faculty to teach that, in a different.
No, what I'm saying is that course is being taught in biology and other disciplines. Even in psychology, they have added some of their courses on these in these areas. What I'm saying is it cannot happen overnight. But what I'm saying is these are the trends. These are the trends happening in the scientific world. If we are not well informed of what is happening around, I think we are not providing the latest knowledge to our students so that they can address the issues in a better and more effectively. So that's the point. When we are thinking about some new
sure, it's a good point. Yeah. But who should teach that? The biology people should teach that, right? As part of biology course. But when I spoke with them, they narrated all kinds of problems. I brought this issue to the biology department, psychology department, after identifying certain limitations like this. But they say they have lots of other issues, it's like teaching, faculty, that limitation, these limitations. Because that's not in our hands, to add that content.
But maybe it's just to have a discussion. Maybe it's just to come together and have a discussion. I find that faculty often think in limited ways sometimes about trying new things. Is that okay to say? I think it's...
Oh, your faculty's here. You want to.
That's okay. I'm not scared. It just seems like it would warrant just some discussion. And what could come from that might be more open thinking, more aggressive pursuit of what it looks like now, maybe reevaluating, maybe you're there and other programs are there, but they don't even really know it because you guys have been in the field so long, and these new BSW program directors, how would they have that richness of your experience if they don't have access to it? I realize BPD exists and maybe that's where all this lives. I'm not trying to create something new, but it should live somewhere, I think.
And deans and directors too.
And you've got the BPD president here, so maybe that's something you could. Sorry. Maybe that's something that you could champion, a Texas conversation at least. You can't make everybody, but...
I'm going to be like Deborah, don't give me something else to do. No, I think it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to periodically review our curricula and look at, what are trends, what are, gaps in knowledge, how can we better prepare our students. I don't know that exists within a single conversation so much as it exists in ongoing conversations in all of our professional realms, whatever that looks like. And we certainly do encourage, I'm using BPD as an example, but CSWE as well, faculty to venture out and have these conversations. The commission is a place, the COA is a place for this conversation to happen. And having served on the commission, we do get there. But once again, they only meet 4 times a year. They've got a prescribed agenda. They've got 100 programs a year to get through, that kind of thing. So it's more think of it in terms of a marathon as opposed to a sprint.
That's right. That makes sense.
Okay. But we should be doing this every day anyway.
Yeah.
Put in some roundtable proposals for.
Absolutely.
I think absolutely.
Say that again.
Put in roundtable proposals.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, I was just thinking that I should have Regina write this all up and
I think it would
as
be
a
awesome.
paper and
Yeah.
at least as a presentation.
Yes. It's a presentation or paper, but if there's anything that doesn't overly burden her that she could share with us that are interested.
Okay.
That would be
I'll get with her
So
when I
study
get
make
back.
good conference papers.
Yes.
If you have a conference that is relevant to social work, to makes a good 20-minute talk about your experience on this committee, what the issues were that we talked about, some data that I've sent you or that you can collect, share with them the field of study that we came up with, our reasoning behind it, the issues for
That feels
future
great.
field of study issues, then during the question and answer period, make note of what your colleagues are saying and their reaction to the field of study. It makes for a good conference paper topic to discuss and encourage you to do
That's
that.
awesome.
We did it as a little panel.
That's right. If
No
a
one person would have
subset
to
of
do the whole thing.
subset of the committee were to do it together, so much the better.
I love that.
I like that.
One other thing, just before I forget, because sometimes I forget to mention this, your expense reports. That little piece of paper I sent you that has your travel expenses. If you want to estimate your return home expenses, you can leave that with me before you leave. Or if you want to just email it to me later, you can PDF it. If you want to keep track of your food and mileage on the way home, then you can enter those numbers. It doesn't have to be exact to the penny number. But it's the coordinating board in the comptroller's office keeps track of how much the state spends on these meetings, so we need to get an estimate. So I appreciate you doing that. Just don't forget to send it to me if you bring it home and record your expenses. And just to summarize now, I want to make sure that my notes and Daniel's notes are accurate here. Our field of study is 5 courses, 18 hours.
15.
15 hours.
15. 5 times 3. Social work 2361, Introduction to Social Work. Number 2 is Social Work 2362, Social Welfare as a Social Institution. 3 is we're going to propose a new ACGM course called Academic Cooperative, which will be field experience in social work. Will have the same definition and description as Social Work 2389. And will probably be called SOCW 2389, right? The 4th course is a statistics course, either or Math 1342 or Psych 2317, depending on whatever the institution offers. And the 5th course is Sociology 1306, social problems. I'm not leaving anything out or didn't put anything else in, right? Okay.
I think that's it.
That's a good field of study, guys. That covers the groundwork. It's reflective of what's already being accepted at most universities. It's got a little bit of innovation and progressive push forward in that with the new academic cooperative course. And I think it's going to give those students who stop with this, with an associate degree, a good solid grounding in addition to being preparation for the major. So we'll see what they say in the public comments, but I think y'all did an excellent job. And you certainly did a great job airing out the issues and very thoroughly considering.
And social workers.
That sounds facetious, but I really mean it. I appreciate not just your time, but your intellectual energy that you invested in this. It's really very impressive. So thank you, and in the long run, your students will thank you for this as well, because this is going to impact hundreds, if not thousands, of students over the next 5 years. So great work. So on behalf of the coordinating board, I certainly thank you for all of your time and energy. And you're welcome to stay, but we'll need to stop at 7 minutes at least at 12 o'clock because of our contract. So,
May I just thank
when the time comes, we'll need a motion to adjourn. Go ahead.
May I just thank our secretary and our 2 chairs?
Yes.
Thank you, and thanks to Rebecca Leslie.
Yes,
Thanks to Brad Peoples also for their help as well.
Yeah.
It's been very helpful. So wonderful.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Well, thank you for all of your communication ahead of time.
Yes, that was very helpful.
Yeah. Happiness throughout the meetings.
Yes, thank you.
My very great pleasure.
Now do we need a motion to adjourn?
Okay.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
So we stand adjourned.
Anybody opposed?
Are we off of camera now?
Don't know. When in doubt, turn off your microphone.